We haven't really did the police.
A virtual participant.
But we haven't, so we chosen.
It's higher radio maintenance.
Okay, it's 6 o'clock on November 10th for our regular city council meeting, so we're gonna start the meeting by calling the meeting to order here with roll call.
Stu Erickson. Here. Ken Mays.
Here.
Joel Newman. Sean Birdsall.
Here. All right, approval of the agenda. I would like to ask, Scott Severs is here. We have some items on the agenda for him. I would like to ask, for us to move the TIF and abatement discussion related to the light industrial park to the first items on the business item section. Would ask for the council to do, and then also curious if the council would, consider removing the horse swings from parks out of the consent agenda for just a little bit of a discussion on that. But not to horse around.
Move we approve consent agenda without that comment and with the changes proposed.
Oh, second.
Any other discussion? All right, all those in favor signify with the sign aye. Opposed? Any abstentions? Citizens Forum, any resident here to speak or would like to speak?
Yeah, nice.
Alan, go ahead.
Is it better I stand up or sit
If
up?
you can sit.
Well, maybe I better stand up.
You got 3 minutes and the clock's running.
Well, that's
And if you could make sure to,
Anybody else comes in, you're gonna give them 6 minutes, but he'll.
no, that's not true, Alan. I'm fair to you. But if you could make sure, if you could make sure that the topic.
I'm not stupid.
If you can make sure the topic's not a repetitive topic, you've been advised that many times. If you could just keep it to what your point is in 3 minutes, you're good to go.
Okay, the first item I have is on the consent agenda. It used to say there will be no separate discussions on those items as a council member or a citizen. That's been taken off. Did you discuss that with anybody before you took it off?
What are you're concerned that we used citizen?
You took the citizen part off there. And in June.
It's probably just a difference between the standard language that Lindsay and Jerry move versus not. Alan, I have been beyond courteous at participation to any topic by any member of the audience, more so than any other city around here when it comes to once the meeting gets started. Like, I'm very fair. I want input. I allow input. So I don't know what.
Okay. Okay, you heard that, did you? Okay. Okay, secondly, I don't understand between consent agenda and business items, because you've got one in there about clearing and grubbing for future fence. That's on consent agenda, and then you got another one down there under business installing stop signs. So why? And then my question is, if we discuss this, can I raise my hand and discuss it with you?
If you have a pertinent comment that's driven based on that, Alan, I've always given that platform.
Okay, so what?
Most city governments, after the citizen forum's over, would not be allowed to comment on any ongoing business in the rest of the
How many-
agenda. That's standard practice.
How many mayors, and how many cities have you done this? I mean, this is your first time being a mayor, right?
That's a standard practice after the citizen
Any-
forum's over to not allow public comment.
Any item that's on consent can be pulled by any council member if they request to have a discussion.
Do a further
let me speak
discussion.
A little bit later on, because I've got.
I would approve, if you could address it now, what your concern is with it.
Well, I'm concerned about the sewer debt and water rates. I'd like to speak on that one under the business items. And I'm concerned about TIF money and the tax abatements on that.
What are you-
Stevens property.
can you
I'm
share
concerned
your-
About that. Can I speak on that one?
Share your concerns right now if you can.
Well, wait till we get to the discussion of it, okay? Can I do it then?
It's not gonna be long-winded or drawn out, so I'll
Can
let
I
the
do it
comments
then?
come in, but I would like them to be on point and pertinent to the discussion.
A little bit about my background. I was an industrial arts teacher. I worked at DMAC for 30 years and I've been in investment properties for a while. And I own the fourplex next door. And the council decided they're gonna charge me for 4 meters. I only have 1 meter. And over the years, that's thousands of dollars. None of the council members own fourplexes, so they didn't really care, and I still am angry about it, and I'd like to get it changed someday. And maybe the new council members, when they get in, maybe they'll make some changes. Okay. Are we good?
I'm good if you're good. I just don't like It's very, very hard to be good when it starts up, when it starts out, Alan, in an accusatory effort and a derogative about everyone sitting up here. I have been completely fair with you always, Alan, I think.
You haven't changed it. I've still put 4 meters.
Alan, the council had the opportunity to change that this year, this past session or year. They chose not to. Okay? That's not my choice. The council makes those decisions. The election was to remain the same as it's been. Anyone else? No other citizens to speak? All right, perfect. Consent agenda, moving into that.
A couple of quick questions on the grubbing. There were some exclusions in there. Is this a vendor you guys have dealt with? So you're.
Betty Gordon.
But
They. The railroad hire, I mean. Everyone hires them for
Okay,
grubbing.
good. So good, solid company. Good. I just want to make sure. Because if you read through them, I can see the reason for some exclusion, but in terms, as long as you guys dealt with them, you're happy then.
Yeah, no, it's long.
They were the lowest bid.
I see that, but sometimes if. The lowest bid doesn't always the right bid.
They're right, or it's because. That's what they do for them. Yeah, that's what they do.
Yeah, but if you guys are happy with the vendor, that's kind of generous.
Yeah.
Somebody might be nitpicking about.
They just-
No.
They just got a better contract writer than the other.
Yeah,
ones.
that's right, and then this is what they do.
Yeah.
And the only other was the water line assessment at the swimming pool, same question, good vendor that you happy with?
Yeah.
Okay, all right,
Not very many. people.
Okay.
okay. All right.
I think you got a motion and a second on the consent agenda, right?
Do we?
Yeah, I don't think we've had
Who
it.
was the motion, the second?
I need,
Second.
oh, you did?
Okay.
seconded, yeah.
So you need a vote.
Ken was the first? I didn't catch either one of those.
Yeah, you motioned with the changes that you proposed.
Oh, I got for the agenda, that approval. We're approving the consent agenda.
Move to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
All those in favor signify with aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And any abstentions? All right, presentations, Jerry?
We have a couple of additional items that were added to your packet, claims, Northland Securities debt, document, and then the, response from Steiner Associates on the odor issue, which those last two items are on the agenda. I want to thank Heidi from Northland Securities for being here tonight to talk about potential plan for retiring debt to the sewer. And then also potential change to water rates. And Mark Land with Snyder, is here to go over the options. That he provided, that his company provided in the memo that we provided to city council. And again, those two things are items on the agenda. We also provided some information from the forensic engineer that evaluated the greenhouse building and the damage, and he acknowledges issues that were related to the wind with the wall panels, the louvers on that west wall, as well as an issue with a roof panel. We also included some information from the city's insurance provider in response to the report from the forensic engineer. And verbally, he told me that the claim, we're still working on it, but the dollar amount exceeds the deductible amount. Which is a good thing, which is more than I think it was $94,000. But I'm anticipating that we're gonna get that claim amount this week. Let's see. We had communication. I can't give you a lot of details because this is somewhat of a work in progress from property owner that's close to the High Trestle Trail. Willingness to work with the city to either sell or provide an easement so that we can gain access through their property to connect to the main street. So I think that's a positive thing, and I'll provide more information as that unfolds. Lindsay and I are starting budget sessions with department heads this week. And we're also going to be providing an orientation on the 4th of December for the new city council members who were elected. And she also provided some information to the newly elected city council members about a requirement for attending open meetings, training. And it's also an option for existing city council members and the mayor that participate in that, and we can provide the links to that. That's basically what I have.
One quick question on your last update from last Friday. Didn't be really clear, I suppose, but it says Jerry, Brenda, and business reps met to discuss possible relocation plan in cities. I had no idea what that meant.
Yeah, it's vague for a reason, and it relates to the potential working with city.
Okay, there's some
gaining
confidential stuff, that's
access,
fine, I
yeah.
just, it was in the notes, I had no
Yeah.
idea what it meant,
Yeah,
so. All right,
You've heard, you know about it already, actually. You just,
I get connected dots.
you know, yeah, but you will.
as soon as more
All right,
information and full cells.
with our close relationship with Sheldon, relocation to me means a lot bigger thing from 100 years ago.
No. Council? Any other council updates? I would just share, Larry Larson, obviously iconic Slater business owner. There's hosting his celebration of life from 1 to 4 on the 15th at the Ballard West. Jim, obviously, a void in our community without him, but very, very grateful for the service he offered. I just wanted to share one quick story about Larry that I think speaks to the commitment to this community that he had. When Fairway moved into Huxley, that was obviously challenging for him. And when I was elected mayor, one of the things a lot of people in town asked about was the future of the grocery store and if we could sustain and retain that grocery store into the years beyond Larry's life. And in talking with Larry one day about that, he, initially asking about a perpetuation plan, he kind of looked at me with a confused look and stated that he wasn't worried about a perpetuation plan because he hadn't thought about dining yet. And that was just not too long ago. But he also shared in that story when it speaks of the commitment to Slater. After Fairway moved in, his pop prices and his margin on a 12-pack of pop went down to about a dime. And that was just his profit. That was not the cost associated with his staff unloading and stocking the shelf of that pop. So the 12 packs of pop there that he provided to us, you pick up, he was probably technically losing money on those, but he was so invested in making sure that those products were there for the residents of Slater and the surrounding towns that I think it just speaks to his commitment went beyond the financial means or the profitability maybe of the grocery store sometimes to just make sure he was here for the residents when they need him. So that is on Saturday, 1 to 4. We do, Jerry touched on it, but we're having some good conversations with a potential business for our new industrial park. The Municipal Leadership Academy, I think, Lindsay, if you didn't share it, that starts on December 18th is the virtual option. That's a 4-part for new council members or existing council members to become educated. He touched on the open meetings. That's a new thing that started July 1st. It's a House File 706 required that by law. The oaths of office for the newly elected council members, will need to do that, I believe, on the December regular meeting. They have to be sworn in by noon on the final day after New Year's Day. So we'll officially swear them in December and then they'll seat in January. Would obviously congratulate those that were elected, but also thank all of those that ran. It's a time consuming, it can be stressful and nerve wracking, but really excited that there's that many people interested. And I hope we can find ways to utilize the others that were interested in subcommittee work or some fashion to support how we move forward and progress as a city. Ken, I had shared this with you, but I'd open it up to the rest of council. On Wednesday night at the 19th, the Ames Resource Recovery and Recycling Plan, there's a meeting from 6:30 to 8 in Nevada in the Story County Administration Building. There's also a Zoom link. They're going to be discussing the resource recovery and recycling strategy for the decommissioning of the resource recovery in Ames. That is 6:30 to 8 on Wednesday night. And we do have a virtual option. Jerry, will you be able to attend that?
I will.
Jerry, okay, will you be in person? Or we
Yep.
virtually? Okay, in person. So we'll have an in-person representative. You'll be able to, Ken?
Thanks.
Okay, perfect. So we have two.
Ames will have their stuff.
We should be good. Ames's staff will be there. The other communities will be there. I've talked to a couple of the other mayors. And I do know there's a lot of concern and frustration about it, so it'll be interesting to see what the discussion leads out. There's also a Polk County 911 Service Board meeting on the 19th. Let's see, Chad, have you ever attended those, Chad, the Polk County ones? No. Never mind. I'm gonna shoot that over to you, Jerry. I've never attended one. I don't think Fire has ever attended one. It might be worth just representing us on one to see what it's about, because I don't know that we've ever been represented on it. The other thing I wanted to point out, which was in your packet, I think they shared, as they continue to go through documents, they've finally uncovered more to the picture on the log cabin. A resolution from, I think, 2008 or 2007, 2008, where it states that the city council stated that the log cabin, the structure itself is given or gifted, owned by the community club. The city owns the land. So I think at the last meeting I mentioned, we'd found a record that said it was a lease. Now we found another record that says, no, they own the building, but not the land. So we keep learning more. And then I did meet with Jen Gogarty as well. We talked a little bit about the community center and library project. In that discussion, she talked and we talked about her and Jerry facilitating and convening a small group of the stakeholders to discuss that, talk about some of the next steps forward, and then to report back to the city council with some of the thoughts on what to do next. And that is all I have for updates. Business items. We're gonna go right to the first one, discussion and consideration of requests to extend TIF agreement for Severs Light Industrial Park plat. I would say this one kind of dovetails into the discussion and consideration request to offer tax abatement for Severs Light Industrial Park. Long story short, Jerry and I met with Scott and his realtor that represents. We discussed the competitive nature of the surrounding competing industrial parks in the region, disadvantages or advantages of Slater's. In that conversation, I think what I would recap it as is competitively priced very competitively, or a better price per square foot than what the competing parks and areas were pricing at. But the one disadvantage that our park didn't have is we don't have any sort of tax abatement or any sort of incentive to support a business that would move into it. And we don't have a tool to really do that right now. The city of Slater already has tax abatement in our city code of ordinances, which matches the exact state tax abatement that we're supposed to be utilizing, and that aligns with the state's view on the tax abatement that should be used. And so that is a tool that we identified. We should probably have this as we go into talks with potential people to be competitive with Blue Sky Commons in Huxley, the Elkhart Industrial Park. And then you have other industrial parks in Story City and Nevada and places like that that are competitive in the region, and along with Ankeny, obviously. That opened the door to, if you add tax abatement, if you remember, we did a TIF arrangement on that. And we agreed to give up to the $700,000 in reimbursement for the public infrastructure that was turned over to the city. We did that on a 10-year basis. If we add tax abatement, I believe it's a 5-step graduated schedule, starting with the first year being 75%, 60, 45, 30, and 15. So for 5 years, the tax revenue will be lower than what we initially said it would be in the TIF arrangement. That caused us to have the conversation with Scott to see if he'd be willing to consider that. Scott is obviously willing to consider that, but by doing that, we now shave 5 years. You know, when somebody moves in now, we shave the revenue 5 years. We shrink that. His ability to recoup his public infrastructure investment now diminishes. So the request was if we would look at extending that TIF agreement, the additional 10 years to the 20 that's allowable by law, to increase the timeline for the recovery. The dollar amount of recovery is the same, but the timeline for that recovery. And then the intent would be any new business would be offered that tax abatement incentive to move in. So it kind of dovetails in the sense that, you know, if you're Scott, you'd kind of like to know if you're going to have a chance to recover those funds before you agree to give away those funds to a business. So they are separate items, but That's kind of the backstory, I would say, in my viewpoint.
Just for clarity, you said before Scott gives a tax abatement. Isn't that a decision for the council?
Yeah.
Separate from Scott?
Correct, but it's not our decision to give tax abatement until Scott has signed off and agrees that, yes, he wants the council to give tax abatement. So the discussion started with Scott because Scott is cutting his TIF by giving abatement.
Because the abatement goes to the business.
The abatement goes directly to the business. So yeah, sure. I suppose Craig and Odyssey, yeah, we could not include Scott in conversations and pass tax abatement and ensure that he has less of a chance of recuperating his investment. But I thought, given the nature of relationships and community, to ask Scott, hey, do you want to have tax abatement to offer to the purchasers of the land or no? Before I brought to council and said, do you guys want to do tax abatement? Haven't talked to Scott, don't know if he's up for it or not.
And Scott, I think we talked previously, I'm definitely pro-business, but I also am supposed to represent the citizens of the town. I don't think we've invested a substantial amount of money into the development of the facility. And to date, we received nothing back on that. So I would hate to delay that out any further until we have more motion. So I guess trying to be a good husband of the city's money. I guess I'm a little concerned about extending the TIF when we're only a year into the TIF agreement.
What happens if we extend the TIF to 20 years, he's paid back in 15, what happens with the remainder of the TIF? Does it come to the city?
Goes back to all, I think it goes back, Lindsay, you can probably answer that better. I think that money goes back to all of the taxing entities that would have gotten it originally.
I think the only difference is if we extend 10 years, we could have the ability to add in city investment in public infrastructure
That's what
that
I-
was made initially. So my vision on what we need to explore on this and why we should agree to do this is because we should look at the initial investment we made to get the sewer line and water line to Scott's land for the development. See if that can be added into the additional 10-year. So that once his paid in full, the city can recuperate the remaining years of the TIF dollars.
That's
It
what I
comes
was
down to what's legal wording for TIF. I mean, if you could easily word it that it would be, $700,000 of investment recouped or up to 20 years, whichever comes first, with the remainder of that coming back to the city. But I'm not sure that's legal for the TIF to word it that way. Or you say 15 years and then, because the TIF agreement hasn't been completely engaged yet. Is that right?
Correct.
Correct.
Well, the
So-
TIF agreement's done. The original TIF is done. The clock hasn't started on the TIF.
Right. Oh, okay. So you can't change the.
We can't change the original. We just could adjust the 10-year secondary period, and what I would employ is that we look at trying to recover what it costs us to get the water and sewer to Scott in that additional 10 years.
Right, I guess to me, that's changing the TIF agreement, so I didn't know I'm not sure what constitutes that and what doesn't.
Yeah, that's a good question. I thought you could adjust this.
Heidi's here, she can answer.
So if you want to do additional projects from a tip area, it just has to be declared as a tip project within your urban renewal plan. And then you have to certify some sort of debt, whether that is an internal loan, or some sort of bank loan, associated, if you're trying to
If we already put the 300,000 in the ground and it's done and it's there, can we do that?
It gets a little bit hairy from a legal standpoint, because you're basically kind of going back and looking at something that's already been done and there isn't necessarily a debt that's to be repaid. However, it's something that you could look at with your legal counsel to see, like, how long ago those expenses were and try, recoup those, but it's always best to be looking forward for projects when it comes to TIF and getting those in the plan and then getting the debt. It's not unheard of that you're kind of doing a little bit of a back step, but you do have to go ahead and make some sort of debt in order to pay that back, whether it's through some sort of rebate or internal loan to pay back a fund.
Can I speak?
All right, hold up.
One thing, like Jerry, in your memorandum, you use both words exemption and abatement? Do you use those interchangeably or are those two different?
They're two different tools. Tax abatement is separate from tax increment financing.
Yes, you use the word exemption in here as well. And that's what was.
Probably- That's probably what term the attorney used.
So, but to your understanding, is exemption equivalent to abatement? Are those two words used interchangeably in here or?
I think that they are.
Okay, cause that's, and then, I would just say so that residents, if nothing else, know that that by using the abatement, it doesn't change what the city gets back overall, because Scott doesn't, essentially what he does is gives up all of his TIF money for the first 5 years to go back towards that abatement. Correct me if I'm wrong.
All or a portion,
Pardon me?
all or a
Well,
portion.
the first year.
Well, on the
75%.
schedule.
75.
Following the
Yes,
schedule.
Follows the schedule,
Right.
and then my other question in regards to that is, so when we do abatement, so when we do a TIF project, the other taxing entities have a ability to weigh in on whether or not we should be able to take their tax money and use it for our economic development. Is that true for abatement as well?
Yeah, there's no consultation meeting that takes place with the other taxing entities with regard to the tax,
Which nobody ever shows up at anyway, but,
that's true. But there is no consultation.
okay.
I do need to state too, for the record, and I put it in here, that we need to get the improvements in the project actually dedicated to the city, for the city council to take action on those.
I have a question related to that. What's the timeline for finishing up the improvements?
Good question. I would reach out to Mark, but it's a different engineer.
So is
that
that
was,
to do or is that
shepherding
plus
us.
to do?
Scott has lights, I think is.
well, it's a joint issue with the city and the developer.
I believe
In
we,
coordination with the engineer, which is not Snyder's.
we accepted the I believe, if I recall right, wasn't there a council where we talked on the sewer? And the sewer line came back as good.
We accepted.
We accepted that, right? That was good. Or we saw the report from the engineer that signed off that it was good. I think the last step is there's like
And
3 street lights, I think.
And the street. Needs
And the
to be
street.
dedicated.
And then we just have to go through the official act of dedicating and naming the street. But I think it's just the street lights, which Scott's engineers talking.
Street lights. Last I heard, the Alliant guy sent me something about street lights, and I said, well, we've never discussed it with anybody. I don't know. Is that my expense? Is that your expense? Is that?
I think my recollection was that was in the number for the TIF. Was 3 street lights. I think.
Remember.
I think 3 street lights were in the agreement for TIF, cause I think we got that quote from them. I remember talking about it with you.
I don't think you did with me, but you might have. I don't know.
Yeah. So that's the last step in it to then. To be completed, the street then gets dedicated and named and accepted as a city street.
So then do I need to get a hold of the line? Or
My understanding was Mark Estrom and your engineer and our engineer were talking about that.
That's JEO.
JEO was our engineer for that project.
okay, well, I'm using Snyder for,
Yeah,
but
my understanding was they were all talking about that,
okay.
that needed to be done.
Well, the only
and that should have been in there.
Anybody was from Jeremy Rasmussen with the Lion, and he just asked me about it, and his question was more like, do you want metal or do you want wood? And I was like, no one has ever said anything to me about lights, but we don't want wood, do we?
No,
No. And I wouldn't.
we want metal and we want you to pay for them.
Okay. I mean, at this point, I'm in some
Yeah,
deep that. You know, I don't know what 3 streetlights cost, I have no idea, but. Doesn't matter.
I don't remember the figures or what got turned in when you turned in stuff. I thought we talked about.
What's the streetlight cost, right?
Wood ones cost about 5 or 6,000, metal ones, I think, were 10 and 12 a piece.
So I should do wood, because then when they rot, then it's your problem, not mine. And I save money. No, I'm not.
Yeah.
for metal.
Yeah. Yeah. We can look back at, did you give just we can circle up on what you gave to the city when you gave the number for the TIF.
You know,
Was that an itemized thing?
It should have been.
you know,
In theory, it should have been, but,
they did all that, the previous city.
okay, yeah,
And so I don't know that I ever really saw a list of how she got to that number, so.
okay,
But I have no, I know I
Alright.
don't have that list, so,
okay.
but whatever, I mean, if that's something we have to do, we have to do it, I mean, and if it's my responsibility. I mean, my understanding on that was the line, I know when we did Trail Drive. Eventually, when it sold, and you know, you had to extend that tip then too, because that was in 08, everything went south and. Took forever to sell on the street, but I think Alliant, I was still working then, and so Dad was doing this, but. I think Alliant eventually gave us the money back for those streetlights, but I could be wrong.
You can get that deal done, we're all for it. Or get them to give them to you.
Well, I can try to get a hold of this Jeremy Rasmussen and see what he says.
Yeah, There'll
But
be-
tomorrow.
Yeah.
What his discussions have been.
Well, I thought there was conversation with JEO that should have been talking to your engineer about it, which is probably what triggered the Jeremy conversation.
Well, it could be, you know, Brent Culp is my engineer and he hasn't. Contacted me about that. so
Okay,
I don't know.
we'll get to the bottom of it. If we need to close the communication gap, we can close the communication gap.
Yeah,
That shouldn't be a problem.
but I think everything else out there, you know, water and electric and
I think it's,
sewer, and I know they approved the sewer and. Oh, what you have to do to approve a water line or electric lines.
I think now they've been those have been inspected, so now it's
It's
just
been in a long time.
the light poles and then the dedication, and that's an attorney deal, so. If we're ready to dedicate, if we know when the lights are going in that, then we can dedicate the street and then we can get that part done, so.
It's actually a letter from the engineer that it's substantially complete.
Completed. So the engineer will send that to
We're
us.
kind of back to where we were in terms of doing the abatement. And or TIF number and I guess my only question, like I said, I'd like to see if there's opportunity to word that so that. So that if there were 5 years left in the TIF, that it would come back to the city, but if that ship might have sailed, and I just don't know where we track
Yeah.
that down at, but. Otherwise, I don't have any problem if Scott's willing to do an abatement to get the businesses in here and particularly. One that maybe started the reason for doing that whole development in the first place, looks like they may be back. Then time is of the essence, and I don't wanna do anything that's gonna slow this down. So this is just for discussion and.
Yeah,
we don't
we
have any
just-
action on
We
it.
just need the clear direction, because if we need to go get the TIF agreement, then that includes public hearings and things like that, which we can extend the TIF agreement. Is that the direction that you guys are wanting to go? Is to extend that TIF agreement, work on the language to extend that TIF agreement, vet what we can include, whether that's the electricity for the lights that we pay, the snow removal, the regular maintenance, is there things like that to help make up some recuperation for the city? I think we're all in agreement. If we're gonna extend it, we wanna make sure that if there's money remaining and time remaining, we'd like to recuperate some of the investment we're putting in.
Great to find out about that.
And so if this group's committed then to that TIF portion of it, then that's great. We can get the legal documents and investigation prepared for that. Which then dovetails into, okay, then it's sounding like we're green lighting the TIF and then the abatement. So then all those legal documents come together.
I don't agree. I am definitely interested in seeing if we extend it, the city's benefit. We haven't even dedicated this project yet, already talked about extending the term. I guess I'm not interested in extending the term. Because that just extends the time that we don't get paid back for our investment. And also,
Amen, brother,
And also-
amen.
also, I believe that the tax abatement would be on a lot by lot basis, business by business basis. That we would decide if it's something that we desired, that we wanna chase. Then we say, yes, we're gonna do abatement for this lot for this business. But I don't think we should have a blanket statement out there that. We're gonna abate taxes for somebody that we don't know anything about yet.
I think if you get into the commercial business world of attracting businesses and talking to economic development in the region. If you wanna take that approach, they'll all settle in Elkhart and Huxley and the surrounding towns and you'll never have anybody. It's standard to designate an area like this and offer that on those areas.
I'm fine with saying that it's available if we pass the requirements, because for the right business, I'm absolutely willing to do all. But I don't think we should just say it's an automatic. And I don't believe that that's really the case, that if we say we're going to consider it, that they just throw us out as an option. I don't buy that argument, I'm sorry.
That's fine, you don't have to.
When
I've done the
I,
research.
I don't,
You can't, don't throw cracks like that around and pretend nobody else has done their research.
I'm not saying they are,
agree.
but I'm in the economic development conversation every day with the Ames people, Craig. I'm telling you, I'm sitting in the discussion with businesses who are saying, we're not looking here because you don't have abatement for us. It's a fact.
I agree with Craig though, because just for instance, we sent Dollar General packing out of town. If Dollar General comes and wants to buy one of those lots, I have no intention of offering them an abatement, even if we do it for the other properties that are there.
I'm not so sure you have the legal basis to determine who does or doesn't versus who fits and who doesn't based on your comprehensive plan. And that's what the Dollar General came down to as well. We can't restrict.
Again, I don't mind. I just want to know what's available to us or what isn't before we
Nice.
sign on the dotted line.
No. So Craig's against TIF.
I'm against
Extension?
extending it now. Doesn't mean I will be in the future, but we haven't even started it yet. Why are we talking about adding more length?
Well, the reason,
Because otherwise.
you're
you
never
can't
gonna
offer
get started.
abatement.
You'll never start if you don't have abatement is essentially where you're at.
Let me
If
ask
you're gonna
this
expensive.
question. Should I understand you to say you feel like these lots are priced competitively with Huxley and Elkhart or with?
Cheaper per square foot.
So.
Is what the realtor
convincing that
said.
We need property tax abatement on top of that if we're already.
Less geographically appealing.
Than Elkhart?
Yeah.
Okay.
And
Yes,
those
it's
can
against
also
Elkhart.
have abatement.
Elkhart, Huxley, and they're offering abatement in addition to it.
Close to the
So
interstate.
the lot price is comparable or less, but if you take that abatement out of there on their building that they're gonna build, it's gonna cost them a ton
Yeah.
more to come here than it is to go there.
Thank-
Plus they're
It's
a
geographically.
mile from the interstate and.
Yeah.
there's-
Elkhart
I get
and
that,
Huxley,
yeah.
yeah. It's just a geographical limitation. I think the sign's been up and I don't think it's been like, the list is so, I don't think we're having this discussion because the list of businesses that's calling are so long. I think we're having the discussion because we're trying to get a project done with the business, but I'm not, and that's a question you could ask Jerry Legal is whether we need to provide it in a blanket basis for the development, and if we don't provide it in a blanket basis, what legal authority do we have to deny someone's tax abatement versus approve somebody's tax
I'd
abatement?
like to find out.
And what standards have to be
basis for
there?
that. There might be some. Businesses that we would prefer not come to our town.
Agree 100%.
So I'd like to find out if there is a basis or not.
And that's exactly why I think this is the key in this whole discussion is you've got a Slater resident who invested the money themselves. If there's anybody that gives a shit about who goes into that place, it's probably the Slater resident who owns the land and who's gonna sell the land. And so I think that's why it's, hey, I'd like to have these tools. You now have the ability to make those decisions. And I trust that Scott, being a longtime Slater resident, isn't just gonna sell the ground to somebody to sell the ground.
Nice speak.
I would, I know there's any action on this. I would just make a motion so you've got a record of approvals or not, that we move ahead with finding out the details we need to, but we continue to move forward to approve the abatement and extension. So this isn't a final decision on that. This is moving towards finding out the rest of the information so we can base that decision. But I would go on the record as being in favor of approving both abatement and the extension of TIF pending what we find out for the details of those instruments. And then that
Perfect.
just does that so that we have a on the record of.
Well, this
How many
council
people in
won't
favor?
probably actually approve the TIF. This existing council won't
Right.
approve the TIF because of the public
I got
hearing.
no skin in this.
But this council deciding whether that seems like the right path forward is important to me.
I think it is.
I feel like that motion's too wishy-washy to be meaningful. And council, can you
Well,
just give
but
that?
because it's all pending, it's still pending details,
Final
information,
vote,
just
yeah.
that we don't, if we don't state now that we're in favor of, why have anybody investigate and go through that if we're not gonna pass abatement in the first place? I mean, if 3 people here are against doing abatement, then the whole issue dies down.
Mhm.
With regard to the actual tax abatement, it's just a matter of amending the actual agreement, with the developer. And there's a resolution that needs to be adopted, but that does not involve a public hearing. But I think with the extension of the TIF, there's a public hearing involved, but I will check on those details.
On the extension of the TIF agreement doesn't have to be done at the beginning of it. It can be done at the end of that agreement as well. Like we've done it.
It could, it's just one of those things where,
Well, yeah, but it's nice to know it.
if I were Scott, I wouldn't offer abatement without the reassurance that I have the extension and
I
vice
agree.
versa.
I'm just saying it's. Yeah.
I think that's why these are two together.
Yeah.
We definitely legally have the context to extend TIF later. But we don't have to either, and that could, this decision that, you know, we make to add abatement or not is to the pocketbook of the person that developed it.
And yes,
Nice
it's
to
a
meet-
balancing act, completely agree, but we have to look at both sides. So I'm definitely supportive of getting business out there, making it great for both of us. But we also have to watch out for the.
Well,
taxpayers.
the only reason I asked for it, Craig, was because I'm giving up the first 5 years of TIF, basically.
If we abate everything, yes.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I don't know how you do one and not the other.
I don't know either. I just know we had a situation where if it's a less than desirable business,
I know what you're saying.
yep.
Next speech.
Sure, Alan.
Okay,
Quickly, not, please.
well,
We got a long agenda and we're on the first
what
item.
hasn't been talked about is, the city already has given your property, invested about 300 to 400,000 in the sewer and that. We
That's
didn't
all
talk
been,
about that.
that's all been public.
Okay, now, and I called you, Scott, and I said, well, okay, the average, cost per acre of farmland is about 13,000 in Story County. You could raise yours up to 14 or 15,000, but a farmer's gonna buy your property and put corn in it, whatever, he can't pay more than that. Okay, and I called you know what your asking price was on it? 100,000 you want for that property. You know who's paying for that? The families of Slater, Iowa paid for that, so you can increase your wealth.
I don't
Okay,
think
now
that's,
we're gonna do more.
Alan, if this is gonna be an attacking and you're gonna attack, then it's not welcome
Please
here.
don't attack me, don't attack me.
I'm not, Alan, you're turning around and attacking a developer in town. I'm not gonna allow you to participate in the discussion. I don't have to, and I'm not going to, if that's how it's gonna be. And every comment out of your mouth tonight has been derogatory towards
And not only
somebody.
that, the
And so,
sign
Alan,
says Alwell, it doesn't even say his name on the sign, and it's Alwell we're talking
That's
about.
the-
no, it's not. It's the realtor, Alan. That's enough.
Still love you.
I'm sick of it, Alan. I try so hard. All right, so I have a motion. Right?
Hmm.
And that motion is to, yep, in favor
Forward,
of the
move
TIF,
forward.
with the abatement, and work towards those both.
Pending details, move towards abatement and extending the TIF agreement to cover that. Some of the cost to the developer of that abatement given to the property owners who purchase those properties. But to keep moving forward with this concept, yes.
Okay,
I'll second
second.
in favor.
Any other discussion? All right, all those in favor signify with aye. Opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, perfect. Now we will, there was one other thing we pulled out that I'll just go to right now is the removal of the horse swings. There's a lot of information in here, a lot of legal stuff. This was recommended by the park board. I obviously grew up swinging on those swings. Everybody did. I would like to just know maybe more assessment or legal associated with, like, do they really have to go? Can they be remediated or saved in any way? I mean, we get a little bit crazy, you know, removing them. I would like to see us figure out how to do everything we can to keep them as an iconic part of a Slater Parks, but
I happened to be sitting in the Parks and Rec meeting when they discussed them. I was originally kind of a laissez there, we were around charts and things that could be on heartbeat. But they did talk about some cases where it was pretty bad. And apparently there's some case law out there that transfers the liability. So that my concern is, wait, if this is a known danger and we don't address it, then while there's a lot of sentimental thoughts about horses. I didn't want to open something up for that. hopefully we can find some kind of acceptable replacement. So that's my spin from that, having been through. Ben is on the Ankeny Park and, right,
He's a
Works for the
certified
city.
playground inspector.
Yeah, he works
Yep.
for the city.
so Ben has some
I'm not
expertise in this,
contesting.
better than I do.
Yeah.
Just repeating his words, kind
I hate to see him go, but when we have this paperwork in front of us, I don't know how you don't.
Yeah, thanks, Jerry.
And you're referencing.
So then I would like
Consumer
to,
Product Safety. Commission.
I would like to, if the council's direction is to get rid of them, then what I'd like to do is I would like to ask the council to, as long as it's applicable with laws, to make them purchasable through sealed bid at the city.
Auction.
When I've looked into it, I don't, they've been recalled in 1995 for being unlawful to resell. I literally was just chatting with him about it, so I just.
You can't just sell them for like this decoration.
I would, if you could check on that, Jerry, I would ask the council to employ selling them in a seal, in the legal format if possible.
If it was
That's
fully
what I'm saying,
recalled,
Yeah.
the way I understand it, it would be unlawful. If you wanna,
So we should just leave them.
but he takes them, I
So we should just leave them.
didn't put that on public record.
Yeah, I mean.
I can check with the city attorney.
So I just need a motion for what you guys wanna do. But I just wanted to say that I'd like to see him stay. I know that now we've seen paperwork and there's concerns. I think that's a low liability.
Would, I guess. To allay your fears, perhaps, I mean, we have good plans, you know, I think we're discussing, possibly a. Parent and toddler, co-swing type situation, so. The parent would be able to sit with the toddler in a toddler swing, they both be able to sit together, there's. Metal frame, they're quite nice, we'd be increasing toddler seats there, which is needed in the park, so, you know, we would. You know, anticipate using the same frames. Just lose the horses, but we would be putting something in that I think. the Public would enjoy, it's something that we don't have right now. So I think it would provide some benefit. We're looking at it, we're getting quotes.
Thank you.
I move that we remove the horses and also that we do not sell them unless we can get an ironclad guarantee that the liability doesn't come back out.
Let me know when you throw them out.
As long as somebody just takes some of the garbage, it's great, then there's no liability.
Craig, would you be open to changing that to dispose of them in a legal manner?
Yes,
And I'll second that with sadness and regret.
Can we just cable the bike helmet to them so we have to wear them?
Just grab a tire in front of them.
There you go.
It's gotta be a way to fix them, make them a little safer.
Rubber Society as a display, and they can raise funds by however means.
Yeah. All those in favor signify with aye. Opposed? Aye, and any abstentions? Okay, public hearing to amend the city's fiscal year 26 budget. So we will open the public hearing. Are you ready for that, Lindsay? We're gonna open the public hearing here about the budget at 6:48 PM with a roll call.
Sue Erickson.
Here,
Ken May.
Here.
Joel Newman. Sean Birdsall.
Here.
Craig Conley.
here,
The budget amendment is just Lindsay's ability as a certified
Finance officer.
finance officer for the city. Her review and realignment and reduction, you read in Craig's or Jerry's memo.
Yeah, in the last meeting.
We've looked at this before, but essentially, the end resolution ends up showing that the income was a little bit higher than initially presented, and the expenses were a little bit higher than initially presented, but overall, the net is higher than what was initially presented.
Correct.
As the changes.
After the changes helped the budget position versus hurt.
And then this.
I don't know if Lindsay has it.
Then my other question is,
I
so and it's not as a line item on there, but the budget amendment changes for city staff amount, which was listed or mentioned as one of them, is that the entire amount for the entire 2026 budget? Does that project the entire change
Yes.
necessary for that?
Yes.
Okay, so it doesn't just bring us up to the current.
No.
That's for.
In current and
Three.
it currents us
So it's the
and
whole
finishes the,
fiscal
3/6.
it should be, yeah. And then the other adjustments were just adjustments that in the cleanup, obviously, it just made sense to clean those up as far as the items that were listed related to the economic development and the R38 street study. Obviously, that wasn't a budgeted item last year as we did our budget. The 100,000 is that related to the loan that was approved but has not been signed or finalized. Correct?
Correct.
So those funds may just stay where they're at if there's not further action.
See, other than the things that Taylor said, all the rest of the adjustments are just, we had them in the wrong buckets. It
Correct.
looks like a lot of changes ultimately.
We,
There's not really that many content changes. There was just some placement.
correct.
Yep.
We're now with the uniform chart accounts.
Yep, good.
Thank you for all your work on that.
Yeah, definitely.
Is there any public comment associated with the budget amendments? Was there any received via writing or anything, City Hall?
I don't believe so. Lindsay, you didn't receive anything, did you?
Nope.
Then I would welcome a motion to close the public hearing at 6:51.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor of closing the public hearing signify with aye.
I,
Opposed? And any abstentions? Public hearing closes at 6:51. We'll go back into regular session with a roll call.
Sue Erickson,
still here?
Ken May,
Here.
Joel Newman, Sean Birdsall,
Here.
Craig Conley.
Here,
Okay, now discussion, consideration of resolution 23 fiscal year budget, 26 budget amendment. Would be looking for a motion to approve.
Discuss.
Okay, Ken, second from Sue. Any other discussion on that amendment? All right, all those in favor signify with the sign aye. Opposed, same sign, and any abstentions? Discussion and consideration of sewer debt and water rates. We have Heidi here with us from Northland. This is something, if you remember, we looked at and then we had to put on a little hiatus. It's something that I think is a little bit overdue for the city, so glad to have Heidi back with us with our new staff. Sounds like it feels like there's good continuity between our new staff and Heidi, so that's good. So we're glad to have you, Heidi.
So you have in front of you, some of this should look pretty familiar, kind of amended things. So what I'm gonna do is start with talking about the water. We did an in-depth review of the users, the current rate structure, where your revenues and expenditures are. And in the water, there actually isn't any debt outstanding. But however, for the last 3 years and 3 years, including this year, it's projected that the water fund is in a deficit of funds. And that is just due to inflationary increases basically across the board. The water rates have not been raised since 2020. And so I have a recommendation today to put a rate increase as of March 1, 2026. And I'm gonna split that rate increase between that base rate and that flow rate equally. And then we have a review of that impact per users. 63% of the residential users are 500 cubic feet and less, and that increase is estimated at $5.59. So you're looking at the majority of users are looking at right around $5 or less for that increase. What it does is it gets the city back into the revenues that where you're going to be making you're going to be breaking even and then gaining a little bit if you're not, have any unknown expenditures. So there are some capital projects going forward that, you may need to plan for. The rate increase that is of March 1, 2026, literally just is getting you from that inflationary period from 2020 to today and getting the rates up to speed. And that's the recommendation I have, today didn't want to jump ahead and say, hey, you've got projects and things like that, but wanted to make sure that you're getting that water fund solvent. Knowing that rate increases are not, not always fun to do. Councils don't like to do those, have evaluated, an option, and a recommendation to pay off some sewer debt, so you don't have to do sewer rate increases as well.
I think the other thing we heard with the capital improvement plan though is that the water plant's not likely to need an improvement, it's gonna need improvement, and it's gonna be sooner rather than later. And so I think looking forward, we need to make sure that we do an increase, annual increase rather than wait 5 years and do a bigger increase. It's the same idea as, starting to boil the frog in lukewarm water or dumping it into boiling hot water.
And you have that suggestion here at 3%, right?
Yes, I have that in there for 3%. I would recommend putting that into the ordinance, now, unless you want to adjust for, take a pause on the inflationary and maybe look at higher rates for future capital improvements in the capital plan. But at this point, I wanted to say, hey, let's get you up to and get the 3%, going forward. I'd recommend starting that process actually at your December meeting, so that you could get your full 3 readings in place before, March.
Can you show that up on the screen, the proposal is?
I don't think we have a copy of that, Ellen. We can get you a copy of it readily available up on the
As we're
screen.
sitting out here, we have no idea.
Was the packet online
I don't.
on the
think so.
website?
That's scanned. Actually, I'm surprised that a 16% increase would cover it over 5 years, when we had 1 year that inflationary expenses were over 8%. The cost of living expenses was 8% in 1 year alone. So, and the same thing, I just don't see it being 3% in the future, covering, even keeping us up to date, let alone having a fund that's gonna enable us to update the water plant. So I think we may want to revisit that 3% amount. The rest of it, I'm perfectly good with. I just think we might need to revisit that amount.
Lindsay, is COLA too challenging to do? It's better to have a flat number.
It is.
Just a comment on this. We're
Hold on, Alan.
talking about connect fees.
Hold on, Ellen.
Okay, let me speak in a minute, okay?
And I would note that this, this rate increase, 3.1 gets you about, a quarter of the year left in 2026, and this would be assumed for your rate increase. So you're 2027. So if you're looking at doing anything further from there, you're already looking at 2028. If that you're putting in those 3%. So just kind of wanted to get something going for you as we were looking at a deficit really in the water this year for 26. Get it in, and then also include that rate increase that I would assume you'd need for 2027 with that 3%.
Really quick.
Just a
math
com-
on that, Of 1%, if we went to 4 instead of 3, is it an increase it from $5 to $6, another $1? And I know I'm throwing numbers at you, but it's a minimal amount to go at 4% instead of 3. Okay. So right now, it did 3% is a $5 increase when the average consumer. I'm wondering if maybe in light of upcoming water plant issues that maybe we should jump at 4.
Taylor?
I would say, I think the adjustment, just to be clear, as Heidi touched on it, this will answer your question, Ellen. It does impact the base rate, which is the fixed cost, and the rate per usage. So yes, the cost is split between the
Okay.
connection fee and the usage fee.
I talked to a person, she's a nurse, she lives here in Slater.
Yep.
Her water bill is $90.
No, it's not.
It was.
Her water bill wasn't $90. I
Her
don't
water
guarantee you
sewer was
that.
$90.
Okay.
$62 of it is connect fees. Just think about that. The rate's
Alan.
nothing.
Alan.
The connect fees, you're killing
Alan,
us with connect fees.
appreciate it, but we all live here in this town and pay the same
They
connect
don't-
fee,
and-
and I'd like it to be $2.
Okay. and quit
Infrastructure costs money, Alan.
Quit
So that's
covering
it.
up. Quit
It's,
covering
we're
up.
not covering anything up,
They
Alan.
don't know.
Again, back to the accusatory. I let you talk, you go into the accusatory. You don't like the connect fees, everyone here knows that. Alan's been coming for decades about the connect fees. We've established that, it's clear to all of us. I want to let you participate for content that's
Great for
pertinent.
that.
I appreciate it.
Move we approve water rate, but, I agree, I think we go to the 4% as an annual. increase.
I'll second it.
Any further discussion on that?
So just for clarity, we do one, once it goes through the approval process, it'll be around March 1st of 26,
This
and then
one's
another one July 1st of
28.
27.
Okay. So it would
28,
be-
right?
Wouldn't be a 3 month and then a,
Well, fiscal year 28, calendar year 27, every March effectively.
okay,
March or July, it goes to July then.
Then it goes to July after
Then it
that.
will fix up.
March
Okay.
and 26.
So then it'll line with our fiscal year increase.
the
Gotcha.
first adjustment lasts for 15 months, 3 months.
One question, if everything goes so great and we're building up a surplus in our water account, are there restrictions on how that money can be used?
Uh,
Hold on just a second, AJ. Go ahead, Heidi.
Those, so when they're built for the water fund, they should be used for water expenses or water capital, expenditures.
It's the only thing they can use.
The only thing they can be used for without taking additional steps.
Okay,
But those additional steps, if we, they have a movement for a motion by the council. Excess funds can be moved to general fund.
Yes, but it does require, showing that you have a surplus resolution passed, proving the surplus and then, having that passed by the council.
Okay. So I was trying to clarify, Sue, is you have to go through some steps, but it can be achieved. Cause yes, we've built up some pretty substantial surpluses in some accounts.
I don't foresee that with these increases. It's just kind of getting you back to, back on pace, for there to be some sort of substantial, stages.
You want to say something, AJ?
Well, I just think the 3%, if that's gonna bring you to where you will be, so you're not going to deficit, that's great, but. You're looking at moving some of those funds. To later expand the plan, that you can take those funds out and separate, and then be able to use those to bond in the future, so that those aren't going directly to. Water related expenses, you know what I mean? So if you want to do a 4%. You could look at taking 3% of that, put you up to date where you need to be. And then that extra 1%, it's pretty easy to calculate that out and then pull that into a separate fund. Just have that always there, and then every year that'll grow where you can bond in the future. So that's an option if you wanted to do a 4%.
But if you're using it for a water plant, that's not necessary, right? Necessarily, because it's still in that account and you're gonna use it for a water related expense, so.
Yes, but it kind of guarantees you that you're gonna have that money for the future. So
Yeah.
it's not going away. You automatically pull that out every month and then that goes directly into that fund. You're kind of assured that you're gonna have some money there later and then use the extra money out of those accounts.
I feel like that's getting us into one level deeper of having many pots of money divided around for so many different things.
I'm just trying to comprehend the why move it that way, the 1% into a separate account when if you just view your water account as what funds all the water and utilizes that in the
You
future.
had an expense for something that went down now.
Yeah, you're just saying you won't see it in your month, you won't use it for operation. You'll have it set aside for capital, is what you're saying.
Yeah.
Out of sight, out of mind mentality kind of.
Yeah, and then you know it's there, because sometimes if you see that and it's like. You're guaranteed to do a water upgrade, 20 years is usually the life expectancy of any plant, so. you're pretty
Yeah.
guaranteed to have to do something within 20 years.
It feels like more likely or not.
Your third thought.
It feels more likely for us, we're gonna have to bond for the water plant improvement, and then at that point, probably need to get in the correct pathway to
Yeah,
contain, but I get what you're saying now.
An alternative to that is just having in the water fund, water capital fund and transferring.
Just do it with accounting versus separate accounts.
Yeah, just a separate sub fund within the water fund to
Gotcha.
transfer that to capital each year.
Okay,
What's,
So we did have a motion and we did have a second
what's
and so
minimum,
everybody's in good
minimum bill? I don't understand that. Minimum bill.
for water.
It says split between rate per cubic foot and minimum bill.
So that's just.
The water minimum is shown right there in the figures, 1216 to 1411. We're
Is that
doing,
the same as what we call connect fees?
Yes.
Okay, the same thing as connect fees. So you're gonna add a little bit to the connect fee. then,
yes,
Yes.
Which is already $50 and $12.
no, it's $14 and it's $12.16 for water.
Yeah, and
I hope the citizens of, and the families of Slater know that, you know, hope they.
I think they all do. You're the only person that's ever been here to complain about a connect fee in my time in 2 years.
Really?
Yes, and I've told you that before, Alan.
Mine 8 years.
Well, they don't pay.
Nobody else is complaining
they don't
about
pay
the
for
connect fees.
Either.
We're all complaining about it. I pay for 6.
You should be paid for 8.
So. Oh, Alan.
Let's move forward on the.
All those in favor signify with aye. Opposed? And any abstentions?
That was the 4%.
4%. Sewer, Heidi, you wanna touch on those?
And on a lighter note, the city does have some excess funds in the sewer, in the range of around $1 million. And so knowing that, you know, that those funds are there, it's starting to look at the option of instead of having to increase. The same thing's kind of going on right now in the sewer. You did your wastewater treatment plant update, had that large rate increase. And operating expenditures and inflationary increases have gone up substantially in the last 5 years. Since you do have loans against it, you actually have covenants saying that you will have rates in place to make the bond payments plus 10%. And in the last year, the city was out of that covenant. So you're going to have to raise rates or cut some sort of expenditure. There's really only a few, looked at the operating expenditures and kind of saw where, a few things will probably go down a little bit from an engineering standpoint or a few other expenditures. And then it said, okay, do we need to take a look at the outstanding debt and try to pay that off? And you do have 2 smaller outstanding debts that I would recommend that you pay off to free up that payment so that you are back into that covenant. What it does is you're paying off, you're using that cash, you're freeing up that money back into the covenants. We don't have to do rate increases in place. If you don't pay off that debt, or start paying, or looked at even paying off your big wastewater treatment plant loan, it wouldn't reduce the amount due enough that you wouldn't have to increase rates. So I'm looking at, there's a 2017 SRF loan and then a 2021 SRF loan. They amount to $1,351,000 in principal. I am recommending that you pay those off for an annual reduction of $112,000 that you'll have to be paying out each year. Once that's paid off, then in the fiscal year 2026, you should be within that rate covenant again.
So I don't know if when you looked at all this, if you're aware that $1 million that's in there is the payment, I think, from Sheldon for their share of it. And then we're also looking at some unknown expenses, the correct part of it that's not working properly now. And so I think we're gonna anticipate that we're gonna easily lower that amount dramatically. If we pay off those other loans, and I think, are those the loans that are at a lower interest percentage than the current one?
Correct, it's on
So
second.
we're paying off a lower interest rate before we would pay off a higher one. But the other thing is then we may have to go back and borrow money or do a bond to correct some of what we need to correct at the sewage treatment plant. So I'm not in favor of making those decisions at this point until we see what those other fees are.
I'd be the same way on that. Worried about what that's gonna cost us.
Yeah, that's a very valid point because those are lower interest rate.
I
However,
understand what you're saying. It
Yeah,
doesn't,
but-
doesn't get us to lower the other amount.
it doesn't, it doesn't get you to, the point where,
Yeah. I just don't want,
once you look at, you finalize the fiscal year 2026. If rate increases don't occur,
Yeah.
you'll have that out of the covenant again, and you'll be kind of drawing down.
Yeah.
On those funds. So. If that's, if that's the case, we could look at some sort of rating. It's likely that you have some, projects, coming up. And
I just want to pay those loans off and then have to bond, do the repairs that we, just 6 months ago, had the money sitting in the account ready.
That's
Right.
higher.
Now the sewer fund has 1.7 million, 1.7
Yeah.
in it.
Did you calculate if we don't pay off, what rate increases we'll have to get up to the 110% rule?
it's an average of $6. User, so, it's, from a percentage standpoint, it's going to be it's gonna be less just because the sewer rates are higher, but, it's essentially. You're going from an average of $5 per user to $11 to $12 increase. On all.
What's the time frame for that? That has to be done in fiscal 26?
Well, I guess at this point, if you get the ordinance in place and you only have 3 months, I'd have to raise your rates a lot higher than what you'd actually, so it's likely that if those loans are not paid off, that you won't be in that covenant, but we would like you to get some success for 2027.
So I think it makes sense to have this discussion after we've talked about the other matters that.
That's fine. So you wanna
Even
just,
if we wanted
do you wanna table it to revisit and
Even
make a
if we
decision in
table-
December?
Later today, we're December meeting, that makes sense to me.
I think the sewer side, that's a good idea.
Mhm.
I move we table the sewer discussion till December.
Second,
With a caveat. And we get a calculation of what, if we don't pay off the loan, you give us estimates of what it will actually cost us percentage, dollars and percent. So we know what we're talking about for names.
All those in favor signify with aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And any abstentions? All right, moving into discussion consideration resolution number 24, approving the TIF certificate forms. Lindsay?
Heidi, do you want to speak? So every year we have to certify debt to the county auditor. These are 3 TIF districts. We have Trailside Plat 1. What's the other 2? Prairie Creek Plat 6 and 7. So
So there are TIF rebate agreements showing that, that 100% of the TIF available will be rebated back. And so the numbers that are in the forms, have been, confirmed as estimates.
Yep.
Of what will, come in for TIF for that next year. When you do a TIF certification, just to give you a little bit of background, what you're doing is you're estimating, the TIF that's going to come in for fiscal year 2027. We do have rollbacks that just came back in from the state, but it's based off of the consolidated tax rate. Meaning, so what the city decides their tax rate is what the county does, what the school does. So, these numbers have been estimated based off of where the consolidated tax rate has been. But it'll be full, that the city is actually requesting 100% available once those tax rates have been finalized.
we'll move to approve.
Second.
this Resolution 24.
All those in favor signify with aye. Opposed? Any abstentions? Discussion and consideration of the options to address odor at the wastewater treatment plant. Mark Land is here from Snyder, has been in, I think, a couple different meetings with Zach Smith, who's here from Public Works, Mark Estrom, Jerry. myself. So, everybody had the material. Jerry did go ahead and share. Craig sent over a list of questions, shared the responses to those with the rest of the council. Does the council want to be walked through those? Does the council want to ask questions about those?
Mark's also provided a pretty extensive memo that you provided to the council last week. And that's also in your packet.
Brief.
That thing, I put you on the spot. Well, by memory, it seemed like when you put in the temporary, a diesel. We were still in warm months. By memory, I thought.
coming out of them.
Yeah, but we're still in them, but towards the tail end, and it seemed like it was doing a job.
It did,
Yeah.
yes. But,
And then we moved into the cold months when we went to the permanent one.
yeah,
So if the permanent one wasn't working, the only difference is different fans. We had the same piping, same diffusers, everything's the same except different fans or. I
no.
don't know. Oh, okay, good. That's what I'm asking.
Yeah, no, we were using the provided hose that
Okay,
came with the compressor.
good.
So, and it's a compressor, you know, you're looking at PSI versus CFMs.
Yep.
It's a big difference, but at the end of the day, we're still restricted by what the diffusers can handle. So whether, I don't think there's a big difference between that compressor and what we're currently doing. Because the restrictions on those diffusers.
Okay.
So you can't push any more out without completely blowing them up, you know?
Right, and that's, I don't understand the diffusers well enough. I know some stuff can
Yeah.
handle more pressure, stuff I can't.
And these diffusers that we're using are 1 years old. They were what they took out of the pond.
Yeah, you can do stuff.
Yep, so they've been sitting in the water for 20 years.
Yeah.
Probably not in the best shape. So we're more of a coarse bubble where we need to be probably a fine bubble. As Mark stated in his report.
Yeah, yeah, is definitely better.
Yeah,
Just more.
so right now, yeah, we're using old diffusers because they were available. And that's what we went with,
Okay.
just to try to move forward with it. But now we have a better idea of how to utilize the CFM that those blowers can perform.
Okay,
So, I think that's the next step is to utilize that, get more diffusers in there
okay,
and go from there.
all right. So my only concern was doing the additional expense. I don't remember what option one was, but adding in more diffusers.
It's like 28,000, whatever.
And those 25 for just the diffuser,
Okay.
the enzyme, all that got up.
Okay. The only concern I have with the diffusers is A, not knowing why we were working and now we're not. And B, I know Tim had talked about the roll and the fact we had all the diffusers on one side. So we kind of rolled the sewage.
Yeah, I mean. Just without. Really digging into it, I mean, I think in theory, that's what you want. But we're also. Basically a year from when we tried that demo, you know, the compressor temporary.
Yep.
I mean, so you've added more sludge, you know, settles, or, you know.
Oh, stop on the bottom.
Yeah, I mean, it's, that's the whole point of the pond, you know, is
Settle all stuff
to
out.
settle that out.
Okay.
Does that have anything to do with it?
I thought of that, but yeah, that's real basket.
You know, and environmentally, I mean, we're, you know, last year was a little different than this year. You would think this year, with it being a wetter year, with our I&I issues, that we would have more dilution.
Yep.
And maybe less smell, but wasn't the case,
Turn out, yeah.
so,
So we're back the same to the I and I was didn't know.
yeah,
You
yeah,
know,
so. Out of those options, in my opinion, I think air, you know, getting those fuses, that's what makes the most sense
okay,
going forward.
all right,
That's just my opinion.
right, and that's, I'm looking for opinions because there isn't an ironclad, and that's my concern is.
Everything we've had professors from University of Iowa, Iowa State, multiple engineers. Iowa Rural Water. I mean, we've seeked out a lot of opinions, and it just comes down to, you can't put enough air into it.
with the number of diffusers we have.
Yeah.
So the permanent install on the fan, our hope is that it can handle with more diffusers, it'll be the high enough CFM with low pressure. Right now, we probably got too much pressure and we're creating back pressure, not getting them out of CFM into the pool.
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
We're limited by the amount of heads we have, which is why the recommendation for more heads is there. We know the pumps can handle capacity. We're running them very restricted right now.
We're running on a VFD and as low as we possibly can without doing damage to our motor. And we're still blowing off. We don't have the capacity out in the pond.
I think when you look at them talking about the estimation, which came from not Snyder necessarily, but from the aeration company, right, about the total number of cubic feet, you know, our blower can do 800. And what we're putting in right now is 120 or 40% of what we really need to get based on the calculation. And so I think it's pretty clear and that's what stuck out to me is you're putting 40% of the oxygen needed based on the size and the science associated with it.
I'm
So
just
you're
trying to
gonna lose
reconcile
there.
what we had last fall versus what we got now. I didn't put dates down, so I remember when we actually got a run, but it was already headed to cool.
It was cooling down already, so I mean, I think you got that false sense of.
Right.
It's working.
Soon as it turns,
We were there too, you know,
winds out of the north and it's cooler temperature, so.
Yeah, I mean, so when we
Well-
got rid of that diesel compressor, it was. I mean, it was cold.
Okay, that's the part that I remember, so I didn't write dates down.
Yeah, I mean, we were having some issues with diesel.
Okay.
Because it was cooling down that much,
Okay,
so.
Question, we could increase the flow of that, but will those diffusers handle an increased flow? Because especially if you put in fine bubble, sizes, you're gonna increase your back pressure.
Well, we're looking at
you're
going
putting-
from 6.
Yeah.
Well, 12 technically,
Right.
there's 6 units in there, 2 diffusers on each one. To 40.
Yeah,
So
so that's all part of the calculation.
That's in there.
And then the difference between if you put larger bubbles and smaller, you're the same thing. Is there a difference in the number of diffusers you'd use in the small bubble versus the large bubble? Smaller bubbles that you make, you're gonna have more back pressure on the pump.
Yeah, there's more friction loss or head loss on the line bubbles if that's factored in because of and that was a good question that you asked, Craig, on just the kind of the operating, but kind of the hydraulics almost of the pressure is to make sure that there is enough, like as deep as the water is, that there's enough pressure off that's allowable from the blower to be able to push those bubbles
Right.
through the pipes so that they can then come up. And because of the settlement pond is pretty shallow, then that's what, there's enough capacity in that head to be able to force those bubbles.
Then it sounds like either way, we probably need to dredge that settling pond. Is that?
Well, I think that's a question, because you wouldn't necessarily have to, because the amount of flow that we're talking about coupled with the enzymes, that's what the enzymes are also supposed to be doing. I think it's just a matter of, in the $40,000 range to take that out and start fresh, that would be the question.
Otherwise, you got if you want to do this, if you find out this doesn't work as well as you thought, a year from now, you're looking at having to pull all that equipment out of there so that you can dredge it. I assume that equipment those bubblers have to be pulled out of there to dredge that.
Yes.
But then you'd be looking at the cost of disassembling, dredging and reassembling the bubbler systems back in there.
Well, you guys are doing the assembly, right, Zach? Most of it.
Yeah, we would be doing it, yeah.
So at least it's our assembly of it, at least fortunately,
Right.
we have public works people that can do it
How
in-house.
frustrating is that to find out it didn't quite do it and we should have dredged it and go back and dredge it when you got to disassemble and reassemble to do.
Well, and we need to get out there and sludge judge it and see
Yeah.
what our blanket is.
Yeah.
I mean, it might not be
Yeah.
worth doing.
Yeah.
But
And then when you dredge it, do you risk damaging the liner underneath that, or is that when you dredge it, is that done by pumping the sludge or is that done with a excavator?
Well, I know when they dredge that, they had a skid loader and a dozer down in there.
Right,
But
but-
yeah, you have that. They've got
But that was before the
basically
liner
weld
was
the
put in.
pipe on, you know, I mean, the goal is to not damage the liner, but
Right.
I mean, it's gonna happen.
Right, but that was done before the liner was put in.
No,
Right.
there was no liner.
There's no liner separate.
It's the same liner that
Oh,
was
it is.
there.
I assume there was a separate liner put in that settling.
Yeah, that would be an additional.
Okay.
Element.
But you can't-
That's possible.
You can't pump, you can't do that dredge by pumping. Just like they dredge lakes and stuff, some of those do that by pumping. Even like gravel pits, they put pumps in there and dredge off the bottom versus using equipment that.
The one time I pumped over Rouse's field, I believe they.
Yeah, I mean, just no different than you'd pump hog manure,
Right,
you know, you have to agitate it, obviously, to
right.
liquefy it.
Yeah, I
but-
was gonna say, I think there's different options that you
Okay.
would have. Typically by pumping it down and hauling it away might be less expensive of an option, but depending on your situation, then there's an option.
And like I said, there's the unknown of, we don't know what it, we need to get in there and check the depth of the sludge blanket.
We don't currently have a bypass, so we can run around the sediment on the only place we go through, just into the sediment.
No.
We can't work around, okay, so we could actually drain it. Okay,
Yeah.
okay, all right, I thought Mark said that was something we needed, we had nothing.
No, we can do it.
Okay.
So do I hear Zach, saying option one is a good, thing to try next?
I think the aeration. Just based off of a lot of people that are a lot smarter than I am. Off of what they had to say. Like I said, we've had multiple people and,
Mhm.
AJ, he's a wastewater operator. And future council member, maybe we would like to give some input on it.
I don't know, I don't see the point of a settling pond if you're gonna aerate it, but that's my side of it.
Well, that's that's the other option is,
So I
do
don't
we
mind.
eliminate?
Yeah, I don't know why it's still
Seven
setting this all one and then. You look at a curve and they separate the two portions of cell one and an outlet, you know. That's something in my mind. Being an operator should work, but. And then, I mean, sludge judging it, that's. It's good, but if you're aerating it, technically you shouldn't really have a huge blanket. It should be all in aeration.
Yeah,
So,
If it's aerated properly.
once we get to that
Right.
point, but currently, yeah.
Yeah.
If we're not aerating,
Yeah.
But if there's a lot of sludge in there already.
I would presume there has to be
Dredge it.
proper aeration there.
Yeah.
Well, and I think, Mark, correct me if I'm wrong, but the options are laid out in terms of confidence of success, option 1 to 3, like option 3 is your highest probability of success.
I mean, I would say option 2 and 3 have equivalent. Success in terms of if the success is purely oath. Because both of those options get you back to. The similar level of odor of what the lagoon always had. So it's not necessarily that it eliminates odor, like all odor, it just gets you back to the odor that you would have, or it would be based on the lagoon odor that would have historically always been there because the lagoon is still there.
And so we make those adjustments and in the discussion, the variable then that we don't necessarily know the answer to, right? It comes down to temperature associated with what enters the greenhouse.
That was the concern of Gross Wen, was that on kind of option 2, where we're diverting everything into the lagoon. Then what that option included was, you know, all the solids would go into there, but then you need to have a connection into the settlement basin to run the flow, because that's the entry into the RAB. When that happens, the flow that's coming through there, they were concerned about the winter months and the temperature of the water running into the RAB. They didn't say it couldn't work, like it would guarantee to be a problem. They were just more hedgy on, that's something they would want to pay attention to, on that temperature of the water that's going into there versus the flow that's coming in, because it's tested
Cause that's how they've been running it out of the settlement basin over the last 2 years, is that seemed to not have been an issue. So they didn't necessarily say it's a guaranteed issue, it's just, you'd have to, they weren't sure. They couldn't say like, yes, that'll definitely work.
So for clarity, option 2 may fix our odor problem, but may now have a affluent problem.
It
Again,
would
go right back
fix
to
the,
where
yes,
the
it
rat
would,
is
it would
working.
fix the odor problem, but there's a question mark on the temperature that is the treatment.
So
part
the,
of
the rat doesn't do its job, and then we're back to problem from 3 years ago.
Yeah, and I don't think it was the sky is falling kind of issue, just
They're not gonna get the growth.
they wouldn't get the
Cold
algal
weather,
growth.
there's no real cold.
And so I think they're a little bit, basically talking about, because it's a newer technology, okay, how much of an impact does that make? I think they just don't have as much of it. Like, here's all our depth of experience on those temperature changes, what exactly that does. But doesn't necessarily mean it would cause problems, I should say, they just don't know.
Well, unfortunately for our, DNR, our limits go up in the colder months. So even if you're not getting the treatment
Oh, okay.
that you would normally get, our limits are more forgiving in the winter months, so the colder months.
We just don't know what the affluent limits could be. With that adjustment, I think, so it's like you tweak one thing and you impact another thing, and is that the wrong thing, and now you gotta fix that? And then the third option effectively is retaining the settlement pond and basically screening out all the solids. Screening grid out all the solids.
Putting kind of the base flow right into the plant with screening out the grit. I mean, still you have the initial screening for the headworks, and you'd have the grit removal. But now you'd have to add a pump into that option to be able to pump the flow into there, and then basically anything over about 0.9 MGD would flow into the settlement basin as bypass, but all of that first flow would just flow right into the plant. So
And
the odor on that one would really come more from when you remove the grit from, you'd have to haul it away, so when you haul the material away that you're screening, then, there's a temporary odor from that process, but the rest of the material is just going right into the plant.
And option 3 essentially mirrors the initial design that was proposed on the initial construction of this facility.
Correct, yeah, that's instead of having you have a RAB on the end instead of a SBR, which is a sequence batch reactor. That was the original design, and now it would be kind of the same headworks with just the RAB on the end.
No disrespect, Mark, but Zach, we have a second opinion on option 1, 2, 3. I guess.
I mean, the other one kind of let's tell what AJ's saying, where we basically go back to utilizing all upon one, and we built that like rear wall.
Right.
And
Which is option 2. I think Craig's asking, did somebody besides Snyder make a
oh,
recommendation?
So if we say we're gonna do option 1, has anybody else looked at, anybody else validated that sort of throwing money at the solution and don't hit the bullseye this time?
no, I mean, all discussions have been with.
Did you say you had professors and all that out?
Well, yeah, that was through Gross went, we were trying to get people out they wanted to help us out as well. He's got connections being a professor and so. That's what everyone said, if that's how you wanna continue the way we're flowing now.
Would the RABs work if we ran everything through settling pond? Would they grow properly in the summer months? Is there enough material making it to the RABs?
Oh, well, it's the BOD, I mean, you're still gonna get. The nutrients are still gonna come through. That's why we got the new permit, we weren't meeting them.
And I think
Going to
that's,
7 pond or 1?
One, if we go through
Yeah, I
one.
think you said 7.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Which is option 2.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
which is option 2,
I
right?
said it'll be too diluted at that point to make the RABs function properly.
That was my.
It might.
Yeah.
Dilution versus.
Obviously, I think it could be about in the winter, but I were in summer.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I know what you're saying.
yeah, and that was one of the points that we asked Gross Land, and they did not express any particular concern over that.
The polite version is, it won't be as nutrient rich.
Right, yeah. Well, not,
Better-
definitely will
as
not.
much as the other.
It goes back to the I mean,
Yeah, well,
their
we'll
growth
never know.
won't be as much on the belts, but algae still will be present on the belt, it's just. The harvest them twice a week and that harvest once a week.
Yeah, which that doesn't matter to us.
No,
Just as
no,
long as
it's-
we produce the numbers coming out.
The city's getting nothing.
Yeah.
Right,
You know.
but the
from
growth
that.
is what cleans the water.
Yeah, exactly.
And so
But
we're
you're,
not.
If the growth goes down, then the water's less
Yeah.
clean and then the effluent's not hitting,
Yeah,
so.
but you're gonna have growth. Regardless.
Right, I just don't know if it's sufficient, that's my only concern.
Yeah, I mean,
Diluting it going through number one.
yeah, and I don't know, I mean, cause it gets to a certain point where it sloughs anyway. I mean, you're talking.
Yeah.
When they harvest it, I mean, they're slicking the belts anyway,
Right, I'm just worried about if it's rapid enough growth to clean the water.
yeah. And that's, I can't,
That was one of the comments that you discussed relative to the oxygen in the settlement basin itself, is the in that, at least in the graphic in here, kind of, you talk about 40, but actually there's room for about 90 some air diffusers that could fit in that footprint. But there's a question too, kind of in that same vein of what the oxygen is doing is, making it aerobic instead of anaerobic, and that aerobic is, eats the, does the bacteria as well. So if you have too much oxygen, then, that could be just not a good thing also for what's going into it. So there's there's kind of a line there of, and because we talked about, with these 40, it is expandable. Like you could add more if do we, how's that functioning? We could add more if that was better, but you also have to monitor. That's kind of why it makes sense to, is there a staged process, like the utility based on the inflow that you have now? But as we've talked about previously, this is a new technology, and I think everybody's kind of trying to do the best for the citizens at the reasonable cost, so trying to get to that.
Mhm.
Kind of phased approach.
And just to clear for the audience, obviously, option one is estimated at $28,000 cost. Option two, which is rerouting the influent flow to Lagoon Cell 1, which we're talking about, is at an estimated cost of $130,000. There would be engineering costs and Iowa DNR permits required for that option. Option three is 2.1 million, 2.2 million. And that is the screening and grit system being added and the pump. So just from cost perspective, that's what you're analyzing across three options. What we're analyzing.
How much of the temperature of the inflow coming into the settlement pond is responsible for the temperature once it gets into the RAB unit?
Yeah, they didn't have
It's because you're pumping in sewage that's obviously at a much warmer temperature coming directly from the pipes than it is once it sits in a huge lagoon and takes on, all of the ambient temperature outside. Is built into this the ability in the winter to divert that flow more into the settlement pond in the winter and
Yes.
less in the summer when you're not concerned about the
Yeah.
temperature?
There's some valves and stuff set up and designed to be able to mess with that, right? In option two. So that you can maintain
Yeah.
that temperature if you need to, because that's the variable of concern.
Yeah, because we added those valves as we went through the discussion, we added the valves.
Yeah.
Valves are not inexpensive valves, but that's, you would want the flexibility if you
Yep.
pick that option. Kind of turn it on and off into the settlement, which, there might be, depending on how you do that with the sludge that goes in there and the aeration of that area, and when you have it turned on and off, that pretty sort of operational things that would need to be figured out.
Yeah. So I think really what we need to come down to is either direction or, we need direction, whether that's to move on a proposed option, or that's whether to do more work opposed to that.
Further question. Go ahead.
No, go ahead. Do you-
On the enzymes. I'm assuming that the aeration and the enzymes do not have to go together. Okay, so the question for me is on the enzymes, I think we're using old farmer logic. running the turnover so rapidly, if I remember right, it's 3 days. From the settlement pond into the RAB.
Yeah, and I mean, that can change, cause we'll run the pumps on VFDs, so sometimes
Yeah,
they're running
in that neighborhood.
full board, yeah.
Yeah. Do you think the enzymes are doing much good, or are they not in there long enough to build up a base? I know you guys have done a lot of work with enzymes and nubs, has succeeded. I'm
I think
wondering if we
there's-
should try the oxygen first, and if it doesn't trigger, then add the enzymes, or it's only 12 grand, just add it.
Those are all variable options that were discussed at the table, is you wouldn't have to start the enzymes or the hydrogen peroxide. You could start the oxygen and see if it worked. The downside is just, I think, the time of year we're at, we won't know.
No, yeah.
We aren't gonna prove anything.
So I think it's just the direction of, is this the way we wanna go? Cause Mark and Zach talked about, we could still potentially use the weather we have left to get the diffusers in yet this year. And then in the spring, they'd be in there so we could run them first thing in the spring if we gave action that was the direction we wanted to go. If we wanna go the other direction, then we have the time period of when, we have the advantage of time to start engineering DNR permits and that. So I think we kinda need to give them some sort of, are we thinking that
No, agreed.
diffusers and oxygen are the way, or are we thinking another option's the way?
I think with the diffusers, we can do it fairly inexpensively ourselves.
So I think I'm gonna lean towards option one at this point. They're both recommending it. It seems like the most cost effective try after that, but if that doesn't work.
I think Mark is recommending any of the options
That was-
for the council to decide if.
I mean, I think as we talked through all the options, just the option one is really kind of a continuation of this path that we've been on, and I think that's the next, on the trying to get there without just jumping right to the Cadillac version or
Yeah.
whatever. That's that would be the next step, because I think we're not at that there's more oxygen, and I think that's the feedback that has been received, is that let's really pump the oxygen into there, because what's causing the odor is the anaerobic condition. That's because lack of oxygen. So putting oxygen into there would solve that problem. And I think the dredging that was discussed is, that could be part of that option. Well, that's not obviously in the 25,000. That would be in addition to that. probably.
That's 40,000 and the other option is estimated at.
Yeah, probably 40 or so.
But the objective of the enzyme, the difference in the enzymes in this strategy is it would be set up on a continuous feed. And so the enzymes and the hydrogen peroxide would be dosed. And basically that was a third party recommendation. A gentleman that Zach and Mark met with,
Yeah.
correct me if I'm wrong, is
If
a
we're
wastewater.
finding enough air through our air, our blowers and our diffusers. Like the peroxide is unnecessary, but that's anything.
Yeah, I don't think you need the peroxide necessarily, but the
The enzyme.
enzymes would be more, I think. Like typically, like in the other lagoons, and everything, we wouldn't necessarily have those enzymes or either. But I think it's different when you think about how they've been doing it versus this is a continuous dose. Well, those are two different strategies. If you just shock it, then yeah, that probably is not proven to be not super effective with your singing.
Before I make a motion, Sean, you were gonna ask a question.
No, that's what I was just gonna say. I think option one, I move we go with option one.
Yep.
Start with that.
With one adjustment, I guess I would say that let's postpone the bioenzymes for now. See if maybe just pure oxygen.
Yeah, 'cause it's, the water temperature's just gonna go down.
Well, but the
The
equipment
enzymes
won't
aren't
do
gonna
that,
be-
yeah. And I would respectfully request, sorry, Mark, but get a second opinion, whether it's Tim at Iowa State or your Iowa contact. Just run the ideas past them to make sure we don't throw another 25,000 at this without some idea.
Just pass that along.
Okay,
What's the object of the hydrogen peroxide? Doesn't it release oxygen?
Yeah, it's basically oxygen.
Yeah.
So if you're blowing oxygen into there,
Yeah,
that
you don't need that.
kind of doing the same.
It would just be a setup to where you'd have the option to increase oxygen if you needed to through chemical versus.
I'm gonna second Sean's motion.
So I just want to be clear here, because I'm hearing, get another opinion, but I'm hearing no, go forward with the option to add the aeration.
Go forward with the option, do the aeration.
And I agree, the only thing I was saying is,
Okay,
let's just, before there was 25 grand. I agree, just make sure you and Mark have a chance to talk to a second,
Yeah.
and as long as everybody's on board, and maybe you already had, then yes.
yeah,
It is the lowest cost option with, I hope, high probability of success. And it doesn't go until next spring, did you say 15 to 18 weeks before they were available?
no, that's just so everybody knows, there's a sheet in here from SSI. Mark went to SSI for information about the fine bubblers, the system, et cetera. If our public works department was to engage them and get those from there, that is the lead time, so that's the worst case scenario. Mark and Zach have already done some legwork to determine whether they can do it faster, and they think they can do it faster and would even pursue doing it before a hard freeze if it doesn't,
But
I
then you
mean,
get something like this past week.
weekend, and you never know. But they would like to get the aeration in sooner than later if the weather permits. But they would try to do it cheaper. This is kind of like worst case scenario presentation on option one. Right? Is that fair, Zach?
And are we fine leaving it to their discretion if you measure the solids or build up the bottom? Your discretion as to whether you dredge it or you just irrigate.
You can work back to Jerry and
Right, that's what
you guys.
I'm fine leaving you guys discretion based on how this is built up.
Yeah.
I don't have expertise. I mean, all in the,
It's sticking the yardstick down there instead of up to the right.
I'm used to pigs, it was full together. So,
So I have a motion to give them the green light on the aeration, holding on the ends of the chemical mixture.
Yeah.
I had a second from Sue. Is that good on discussion, everybody? Okay, all those in favor signify with aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And any abstentions? All right, moving into the next item on the agenda, consideration of factory strength conditioning rental of pavilion at Nelson Park.
Yeah, the city council, approved the extension through November 9. At the pavilion for Mr. McNew, factory strength and conditioning to rent the pavilion facility. He sent, I reached out to ask him if he was gonna be requesting an extension. It is getting colder out. And he responded back, and I provided you a copy with his response from Thursday. And he's stating that this last weekend was his last weekend to operate in the pavilion, and that he's planning to remove all his equipment this week. So we have this item on here for the city council to take action.
So it's unnecessary, outside of maybe we want to set all things are gone by a
Take
certain date.
action to have it
Yeah.
removed by like November 16, which would be Sunday.
And I do think one thing we agreed and green lighted on the front end was that the grass, any grass kill, he'd be responsible for the replacement of that. I don't know if if we try to collect that or make an estimate as to what the labor and seed cost to fix that area that the container was on and ask him for that, or whether we take the revenue that we got from renting the shelter. Is he paid up on the shelter
He's not paid up for this last time.
for the second 30 days?
Correct.
So that means 25,600 and some dollars.
Mhm.
It's over 800.
That's what I'm saying,
This
that's
is what he owes
800.
today. Okay, oh, he knows that he owes that, or we
He knows.
told him? Okay, and is there an indication on when payment will come?
I've not talked to him, Dean.
Okay,
Other than he said,
All
I'll
right.
take care of it.
as long as we follow up on that, and then do we want to just set kind of a hard deadline that we want everything out of there?
Yeah, I think it's not out there by Sunday, the fees keep going. Personally,
And then can you make notification, can we send, make sure we have a response, but a notification to him of that?
I think I see too, I mean, can't be that much, but
Yeah,
private versus public, I think he agreed to it, he should pay whatever 20 pound bag seed, whatever it can cost.
Okay.
Don't know how big, just one container down there, or is there,
it's just one.
I think that's,
I mean, at the end of the day, we have that revenue from the park rental that, assuming we get paid that, that was something we wouldn't have had, we didn't have or wouldn't have,
Right.
so. Okay, so out by Sunday.
obviously.
Motion for that,
With the
If
seat.
the ground's good enough too, would be,
yeah,
I mean,
Don't tear the park
don't
up.
tear it up to get out by Sunday, I guess either,
yep,
just make honest effort to get it out.
okay. I don't think we need a motion for that. I think we're in agreement on all that necessarily.
Is there
You
consensus?
okay? There's consensus, right?
Okay.
There's consensus. The next item here is discussion, third and final consideration of ordinance number 312. Most probably didn't see it. Local resident DOT shared an email very end of the day that I forwarded right away to everybody regarding some standards associated with when you can and can't use signing for a right of way. The main street in that isn't governed, or, the DOT doesn't really have say as to what we do on our main street with that. But it's just the standards for determining MUTCD is what it is. How and where you can apply those things. He, just to let us know that, hey, you shouldn't do stop signs for speed. As you go into it, Jerry did some research on it and I did as well once I received it. But essentially how you can apply four-way stops, where and what, and it ultimately leads to, hey, you should really do and have an engineer do a traffic study and determine what's applicable for the intersection. There was a couple things associated with a section of that where stop signs are applicable. That essentially stayed in there related to, stopping, let's see, stop. Where was it? Guidance. Where was that, Jerry, that I was reading?
Yeah, well, the four-way
Here it
stop,
is.
is that what you're looking at? The four-way?
Yeah, multiple stop applications. There's a section on this, right, that reads and minimum volumes and all these recommendations that DOT follows, but there's this optional criteria at the bottom underneath section 2B.07 multi-way stop applications. The option section, basically, the need to control left turn conflicts would be a reason the study should include this. The need to control vehicle pedestrian conflicts near locations that generate high pedestrian volumes. Locations where a road user after stopping cannot see conflicting traffic and is not able to reasonably safely negotiate the intersection unless conflicting cross traffic is also required to stop. And then it goes into an intersection of two residential neighborhoods, collector through streets has similar design operating characteristics where multi-stop would improve traffic operation. I don't know if the council feels compelled to invest the dollars in an engineered traffic study, or if we feel like the pedestrian, the cross traffic exposure are factors that could be utilized as part of the reason.
Growth library.
I think that's all adequate and, even the sightlines when, as it's
Yeah.
currently used with the food trucks up here, really
Yeah.
add to a reason to have that four-way stop. So I think for me, it's more about safety than it is anything.
Yep. Even with angled
And
parking,
I would
if you
say-
pull out.
Duly noted that we got more information. I move we do the third and approval of stop signs as published.
Are all these four-way stops? It doesn't say here. Are
They're
they
all four-way stops.
All four-ways?
We're gonna be,
The two on.
The two
will
on
be
First Street are
three-way.
three-way because there's not a four-way,
And the
but
two
there'll be
on the
all-way
four-way.
stops. 2 3-ways and 2 4-ways. Okay, motion from Ken, second from Sean. Any other discussion on that? All right, all those in favor signify with aye. Opposed? And any abstentions? Okay, so that passes. Discussion and consideration of animal chip reader for City Hall. This was tabled at the last time. I think, yeah, go ahead, please. Yeah, if you could just introduce yourself, yeah.
City council members and Mr. Mayor, my name is Paula Killstrom. I am the co-founder of Oh My Dog Rescue. We are a nonprofit dog rescue registered in Boone County, but we operate as a foster-based rescue, which means all of our dogs are in foster homes run by volunteers. Earlier this summer, we were granted some funds from the Mattered Endowment Fund. And with that money, we started a project installing microchip scanning stations in local cities. The Mattered was the first. We now have stations in Boone, Polk City, Huxley, Adel, Carlisle, Altoona, Newton, Davenport, and Norwalk. We just had a meeting with the Des Moines Police Department last week, and they are moving forward with at least 10 microchip scanning stations in Des Moines proper as well. I sent a message to your city clerk, I believe, 2 months ago in September, with the offer that we would love to do this for the city of Slater. Oh My Dog Rescue does a ton of business here in Slater. We record a weekly podcast at Studio 205 with Tanner. We prep for that podcast at Nighthawk. Makes things a little more interesting. I also play mahjong at
Library.
the coffee house across the way here every Monday, and you know, we enjoy being here in Slater, the business that we do in Slater, we want to give back to the city of Slater. And so I sent the message over and just with the general overall information. At that time, she felt confident bringing it to you and didn't request my presence, so.
Yeah,
But I
no
was
worries,
happy to be here now.
no worries.
This is a mock-up of the sign that gets installed. We have a professional installer that installs it for you. If your public works department would prefer to do it, that's fine too. It's a metal sign. This is just easier for transportation. And it shows how to microchip scan a dog for a microchip, what to do if it is microchipped, what to do if it's not microchipped. And so the only information we would need from you is what you would like here, or you would like
Non-microchip dogs to be called.
reported to, whether that, if you have a police department, or if you prefer to go to Ames Animal Shelter, or what have you. We customize that for you there. And then below the sign is mounted in a waterproof box. With a universal microchip scanner, which means that it can read any chip, any brand, anything, on a retractable cable. Easily allows the person to scan the dog for a microchip. All of this is free of charge. We have funded all of these projects ourselves through donations and community outreach. Getting great traction, and we would just really like to have dogs skip your resources, meaning your animal control, your police department, and go get back home as soon as possible. We also like to follow this up with a microchip scanning clinic, where we would come to your city and be available to your residents to microchip your dogs if they're not already microchipped.
Awesome.
I think our goal was no cameras, correct?
Yes, I did get feedback from her on that. We would like for them to be under camera for in case of vandalism. But obviously here in the town of Slater, that's not a huge concern of ours. Yes, it is not, our one in Carlisle is not under surveillance, but the police department has committed to, you know, passing by it. It's at the dog park, so they pass by the dog park multiple times per shift anyway. In the event that it was stolen or vandalized, so we would replace it free of charge, and we would check it, if not weekly, bi-weekly, to ensure that it's still operational. I haven't had any, I've checked on the Madrid one every week for the last 7 months. It hasn't dropped a bit in battery. We have not obviously seen one of these through an Iowa winter, so not sure quite yet what, you know, some negative temperatures are going to do to it, but we're committed to maintaining it nonetheless.
Questions? Greg,
Camera,
Ken?
my own question, you said they do all, they're universal, so.
Mhm. They can be installed anywhere.
I got you. I'll come to you.
We, 90% of them are installed at police departments. Des Moines has opted to have them installed at their fire stations. They're more, you know, parsed out. And then of course the dog park. Davenport, I believe, is doing it at their shelter. Newton is doing it at their holding space. So whatever makes most sense for the city of Slater.
Ken, Sue, Craig, questions?
Had some contact with, was Slater Animal Hospital was contemplating doing it, providing it or two, or did I read that?
Right. The veterinarian stopped here and
Yeah.
communicated with staff that they
Yeah.
were interested in doing something separate.
Yeah.
Providing a chip.
They would do something similar if we wanted or whatever on their
Yeah.
building.
Yeah.
They just
Just haven't
requested
been
that
able to catch
we,
her, and I know she's gone now.
that we provide signage or do that.
Right, that they provide the chip reader, that the city pay for the sign.
That's only the same concept, I think.
We just do this there.
That's up to you guys. I don't see Harm
I
and
don't
multiple
think it
chip
matters a lot
readers if we need.
As long as she's, I don't know, is she willing to host this one at her office? On her office wall? That's probably the one thing we need to verify, because we don't otherwise have a very ideal location for it.
I can't speak for her, but I don't think that she was intending to do what
This one,
Holly is.
At hers, she was gonna do her own or
Right.
was willing to do it in lieu of that or of this or whatever.
I guess I would still say that we should table it until we find out.
So she stopped by after it was already proposed?
Yeah, she's not done because she didn't know that it was being proposed or that it was a need of the community. You obviously brought the idea to us, but I mean, what's the harm in, I mean, could we have two of them?
Yeah, could do one at the dog park and one up there.
I mean, is there
But the
harm in
dog
that?
Dog park
really
maybe wouldn't be a good
not-
spot.
Not very
Yeah,
centrally located.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
the kids would probably bear up down there.
I guess I was envisioning that that something like this would just be right here at City Hall or something.
The problems with that is City Hall getting bothered all the time to come out and if somebody's not sure how to do it or whatever, to come out and help
Yeah.
them do it or ask questions about it.
That'd be my reservation also is,
Well, how many times is this actually happening? I mean, I'm sorry, but like, does this happen once a month or?
well, I know you ended up with a pet here that you may not have wanted.
Yeah, a couple of weeks ago, we had somebody bring in like 2 or 3 cats.
Yeah.
And we kept them here for 3 hours, 4
Maybe
hours.
4 hours.
That's the other thing is
We are not.
yeah, we've had an agreement with Slater Animal Hospital before that they would hold them until either they're claimed or for a day or something until Story County's called. And I don't know what that. Again, I haven't been able to reach her. She's out of town now.
Yeah, I don't know anything about that. I couldn't find anything
Is it
about that.
To not go with a fully funded, ready to go solutions?
Only if,
I don't see them.
I don't see one.
I don't see this person.
I'm just saying if that interferes with our ability for her to do the temporary animal control that they've done in the past, then I would rather do that.
Well, I think the good news is we could put, I mean, we could recommend that she be the first contact and then add a secondary contact potentially
Yeah.
I don't have a problem.
on who to call, report to this place or that place.
We can make it say whatever you want.
Yeah, I'm in favor.
I'm supportive as long as I'm just literally about having it here. That's about the concern.
Huh?
Jerry likes dogs.
Yeah, I don't know where it could be mounted to, but to me, I think the
It's mounted outside.
the frequency of this usage is minimal in a town not like ours.
As I noted in the initial email, it can be put on a standalone 4x4 post as well. So
The,
it can go at the ball fields, it can go on the side of this building, you can put
Yeah.
it on a post in the middle of Main Street for all I care. As long as people know where it's at and know that it's accessible 24/7, that's all we really are concerned
Yeah.
about.
Okay,
That's why originally I thought putting it on the side of that office building, because then it faces the fire department, which is probably gonna have cameras in the near future and lighting. Then it's in a good location, but same thing, if she'd rather have her own system out there versus this one, then I would rather do that. But other than that, it doesn't matter.
I think it's a good idea. Get one, of some sort, doesn't matter.
so you want to allow staff and public works to determine the best location, or you guys want to say in the
I think that
location?
Sounds good.
Okay, so I'll take a motion to approve this
I move we approve the, my dog.
with public works
Yeah.
to determine placement.
Yep.
Second,
I'm sorry, who
I second. that.
Another comment?
is my contact with Public Works? Do you want me to work with? her?
Yep, we'll get that to you just a second here. All those in favor signify with aye. Opposed, same sign. Any abstentions? It was Nasty, I think you talked to here with our office. She'll reach out to you. We'll get that with you and we can coordinate a time with Zach or Mark or Corey or Jason, somebody to help get that hung
Cool.
at their discretion. Thank you very much.
I appreciate it.
Yep, so now we're gonna skip down here to discussion and consideration of proposed City of Slater investment policy. As I recall, we tabled this last time for a verification that our funds were secured inside of South Story Bank. I believe Jerry's provided that in writing from South Story Bank. Is there any other points on the investment policy that need to be reviewed or discussed? Then I'll take a motion to approve if everybody's good with the writing from South Story approving. That they're
102%.
120%,
All of
right?
the funds are collateralized,
102%
insured.
collateralized.
I move we approve.
I'm just being respectful if you have any questions or thoughts. No? Okay. All those in favor signify with aye. Opposed? And any abstentions? Discussion consideration resolution 22, naming depositories. I believe this was additional to the investment policy, so.
Move to approve resolution 22.
Second.
Just one question. So mayor and clerk only, city admin? The city admin in this thing?
Well,
We didn't change it.
In here.
no, this is about where the money can go.
Just
where-
South Story and I pay.
This isn't signature.
This isn't who is signatories or bank access. This is just simply that no money can be held in any other place besides South Story Bank and I pay.
Oh, sorry. Oh,
That's what we're
Yeah.
on.
Depository, so it's the.
Where
facility
where
that-
you're the funds will be deposited.
Last sentence, or second last. It further resolved. So. Don't worry about it.
Yeah, I think that's just weird to execute the resolution, not that we have any. I think that's probably on
Yep.
every single resolution. Okay, all those in favor signify with aye. Opposed? And any abstentions? Okay. Discussion consideration of solid waste and recycling plans. I'm just gonna throw this out here right now. I think there's too many moving parts for us to commit to the 2080 agreement. There's a meeting next week on the 19th. The only thing that I guess I would like to ask and verify or make sure that staff is working on in the interim is, I know we're gonna contract Metro Waste. I think we need to probably
yeah,
contact the DNR as well. Because it's my understanding that DNR may have to give the green light to allow us to skip out of the county and take it somewhere else without the county agreement.
Yeah, I checked with the Metro Waste Authority and there's a process that you can go through to opt out of the planning area. And I didn't get into those details yet because I was waiting for council.
Direction, okay,
Yeah, we talked about it, but.
okay.
It's in the memo.
You can, usually with a letter and. And then, but then you also have to negotiate where it is gonna go, and then you have to do your own
Agreement,
recycling. Well, and you have to do your own
Right,
recycling.
you have to have a
You
plan.
have to
Yeah.
do something where you're gonna reduce the waste stream, which is hard to prove.
which is coming to us regardless of what we did. Some encouraged or forced or cost for recycling is gonna come through this method.
Yeah.
At some point.
Basically, your cost for garbage is gonna double one way or the other.
Yeah. Through the resource recovery for sure, and your personal costs probably, yeah.
One question. Is the 2080 automatically renewed? Is there a cutoff date where we need to say we need to have this done before X or else we're.
There's a term for it, yeah, but it's
That's
like
what I
20, it's like 20 years. You don't, otherwise, once you sign it, you're.
We're locked in for 20 years, but I think you're talking about the current 2080 expiring and then our trash being on the curbs. And not being picked up or whatever,
If we
yeah.
go past X date, then suddenly we're committed for the next year or 20 years or whatever. I just wanna make sure we didn't.
I
check
think,
the Existing before.
City staff
Ours
from
is-
Ames asked us to take action on that 2080 agreement.
Okay.
but they're obviously aware, I know a couple other communities have not signed that 2080 agreement either.
Okay.
And we, somewhere in here, it said we could live by the one that we're currently on, which is, goes to like 32 or something, right?
34.
34. So we can continue to live by the 2080 agreement we signed through 2034 without having to sign a new 2080 agreement.
Right.
And there's not a lot they can do about that as I read this, but that may or may not be.
I just wanna make sure that.
They'd like to have us sign it so they can plan on our money to help build their new
Facility.
Yeah.
$14 million thing.
I just wanna make sure as we ponder that we didn't miss a deadline. That's. my
Yeah,
only
we're
reason for the
good.
question.
So I feel like after the 19th,
Yeah.
we'll have a little bit more
Yeah.
time.
If we don't sign now and we hold them to their feet to the fire till 2034. And then we don't have another option, then you can bet that our share is
Yeah.
gonna go up dramatically compared to what it is now.
Yep.
Do you guys want Jerry to pursue the Metro Waste alternative?
To find out about the process.
Yeah,
Get out of
the
it.
Iowa DNR regulation.
I think it's good to have
Planning
back,
area.
we can do the guy type, the town.
Yeah. And then they're not the only game around either.
No. I
Yeah.
provide a map of all the planning areas and we're actually in the pink area in a central
Yep.
location.
And I've asked one of our haulers in town local to us if there was thought that we could get into Boone potentially, and maybe if the DNR would let you, they'd work with a small town like us right on the Boone County border. Maybe absorbing or just taking Slaters wouldn't be as,
Yeah.
you know, as big as taking the counties, so that could be an option, but it sounded like I was redirected to, you better talk to the DNR to see if they'll even allow that.
Yeah.
And that's what Metro Waste basically said too, is the
Mhm.
DNR controls the process essentially.
When it
Right.
comes
So we need to figure out if they'd even let us, if that's even an
And
option.
that's where sometimes you're better off working by yourself. I mean, most things you're better to group together, but if all of the towns in Story County try to avoid Ames and do it on their own and they all want to go to Boone County, Boone County's probably gonna say
No.
no.
Yeah,
If just Slater goes to Boone County,
we might have a
says,
shot.
hey, how about just us? Cause we're already, part of us are right on your border already.
We're in it, yeah.
Yeah, then we may have a lot greater chance of doing that than. and
Yep.
The same way Colo and Collins do it with Marshall County. They're not part of the Story County system now,
Hmm.
so. That may be a better option, but we still gotta know how many hoops we have to jump through with the DNR, so. I
All right.
think Jerry,
So Jerry,
Continue
there's
to investigate
consensus to
that,
find
that'd be
out
good.
what the DNR will let us do, would be great.
and we'll find out what the song and dance is for me.
Jerry maybe talk to Shell also, so if a carrier. Well, only a mile apart, we can get better deals worked out somehow, some way, I don't know, that,
Well, they're already,
Shut
they're
off.
already part of
contracts
Metro
for one
Waste,
carrier.
they're in Polk
I
County.
think so, but. Maybe get better service for both of us if we got two cities working together to the ones.
People run their making sanitation.
Yes.
Two things are, so.
Yeah, and you're a one stream, one provider.
That may be part of this too, is that.
We get forced into
Especially
that.
if we go to a different location, if we go to a different system than following the Ames model. Is we may end up having to create our own utility is to do garbage through the city. Which sounds like a royal pain. I mean, you already got part of that system because we do that already for water and sewer, so it's not an enormous leap of recreating. The wheel, but
Yep.
But obviously, we need to be sensitive to how much time that's gonna consume and what are the soft costs of that involved as well, so.
Yeah.
A lot, like Taylor said, there's a lot of balls in the air just on one issue,
Right.
how to get rid of your garbage.
I'm just throwing your hopper of things to consider. Cause
And focus on recycling.
So you have a direction, you feel like you have a direction?
Recycling.
Yeah,
I do.
recycling is gonna be a part of it either way. Okay. I don't think we need a motion. You feel okay about
I'm good.
direction? All right. So then the last item tonight on the agenda, discussion and consideration of draft Slater capital improvement plan. Craig had sent a list of projects he wanted to have discussed. I think Gary's memo outlined some of them. I think the biggest takeaway for me is currently over $11 million of project and equipment purchases identified for fiscal year 27. Lindsay's determining the unappropriated balances that Craig asked about. I said this at one of the staff meetings, but I know that this process feels a little bit messy or like there's uncertainty and like, hey, where are we going? How is this gonna work? What's it work? I think we really just have to lean in and trust the process right now. We're starting in a mid-budget year in a process where we haven't really done this on a public basis with department heads identifying things, items like that. I also, in talking with Jerry, wanted to make sure that we kind of did a good job of really kind of trying to separate the 26 stuff that like, we've already approved that budget, we're living in that right now. And taking that out of when we think about our capital planning, we're really talking about the 27 projects is what we in a future year, that's all we'll be talking about is the next budget years. More so than can we do this one this year yet? And then I think the other factor to keep in mind in this is all of this is a beginning point and a starting point. It's my goal, and I think the council's goal, that we're gonna do comprehensive planning in the next 12 months, hopefully. In that comprehensive planning, there will be citizen and resident feedback opportunities. So the residents, we talked to, Ken, I know has talked about when they did it at Ballard West 10 or 12 or however many years ago that was. I'm hopeful that in our comprehensive planning, or the expectation in my mind is that there will be that community feedback opportunity over the next 12 months through the comprehensive planning, which will probably bring to light things that will cause us to amend or adjust what we believe to be the capital improvement plan. So I'm just kind of asking council and everybody like kind of lean in, trust the process here. It's new to us. And it feels sometimes messy or confusing about what we're doing or where we're getting to. But I think we just have to trust that it'll work, and Jerry and Lindsay will lead us to where we need to be to do the best that we can with the taxpayers' funds and accomplish the most that we can as fast as we can. Jerry?
Well, and another way to look at that, like the mayor said, currently, and again, we started with needs, what are the needs, and segue into what the priorities are. If you look at fiscal year 27, of those things, of those items, I guess I was thinking in terms of how they relate to maybe more maintenance related work or projects compared to what would be considered a new item or a new project. And probably half of those would be considered like maintenance related. Half of them are considered new items. I mentioned in my update that we're starting the budget process. You know, we started the CIP process with the department heads. So I think we'd like the opportunity to go back, knowing that we're looking at $11 million capital improvement plan for fiscal year 27, that it's not practical. It's not, there's more work to be done. And so we think that if we sat down with the department heads, taking into account the work that's been done and looking at the budget, because we will be looking at the current fiscal year, 26, which ends June 30, as well as the new budget for fiscal year 27. There was some questions that were raised at the last meeting about the cabin, like how many users there are. And so we provided those statistics August through December. Summer months, pretty popular, or, most activity. 18 to like 11 rentals through December. And then there were questions about the use of the cemetery, because that was one of the projects, potentially acquiring additional land. And so we looked at the last 3 years in terms of what the purchases have been for the deeds. And it fluctuated from 12 this year currently to 15 last year, and then the year before that was 5. So if you average those out, within it would take over 13 years to capture, to get to the 150 units that we actually have left, or lot sales that we have left. And then there was some questions about the Trailside Sports Complex. We received a couple of grants. One was the REAP grant for $75,000, and that was to be used for the trail work. And then $168,000 was actually from Story County Board of Supervisors, and primarily designated for site improvements. There was a question about whether or not the retention basin was covered under the city's insurance policy, and Lindsay, I, and Mark met with Assured Partners, who's our new insurance provider, and they assured us that that would be covered under the city's umbrella insurance. So as far as, changes that took place at the meeting that we had, the special meeting, there was 13 different things. I can go through them, or if you have questions, like the mayor said, we did break it down. At the very end, there was a question about, well, what does it look like for fiscal year 26? And so we provided that. That's the sheet that's primarily green, and broke it down into things that are in the budget, and then items or projects that would require a budget amendment. And so there's, if this is approved, would require an amendment to the tune of just under $200,000. And then we broke down for fiscal year 26, the Trailside Sports Complex improvements, in addition to things that we pushed up for future years, 27 and 28. And then the one that the most color is the one that really identifies the fiscal year 27. Again, the total was over $11 million. I guess, I think. One way to look at this is to look at things that are really more maintenance driven versus things that would be considered new projects.
Your 11 million, the ones that are still blank, they're reserved.
There's a few that we don't have estimates for, but
But
most.
that's
of them-
not in the 11 million.
So those count as zeros, right?
Right.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's a work in progress.
And there are some minor deviations between the first page and favorite. And then the 3-page document didn't always line up with each other.
And one was October. One's the more recent one, right? At the top, they have revised 10/31 and then the other one was 10/20.
Right, but I thought the short one was a subset of the bigger one, and there's differences between the two.
Between this one you're saying and the 10/21?
Yeah, the 3-page one versus the other one.
I think this one is just supposed to be this budget year that we're already living in.
But some of the, like
Which one
the
you
X
have?
and XBs are in different years.
The one up at the top that says 31.
Yep.
10/31.
Those are all the things that were identified like in this fiscal year essentially,
Right, as far as the
Or
notes,
moved.
they'll eventually all get.
Or-
one sheet.
or were moved.
But
On
even
this
things
one,
like,
on this revised one, there's 2 of them that are duplicated on there.
Well, are you comparing the bottom to the top in that? Cause all he did, I think on the
Took out
bottom is
trailside.
separated trailside, so all the trailside ones are also written above.
Yes, that's what I mean. They're.
Yeah,
they're
he just put it in a
duplicated.
segment because I think somebody, it was requested to just see the
Yeah.
project basis.
Okay.
So that's just the project basis in the fiscal year. It is also reflected up above.
Right,
Right,
okay.
so what is the total for 26 right now?
558,000.
And just to remember there, like, keep in mind, the only things that are happening on the 26 list right now would essentially be the budgeted items, which are marked with the X and the B. Anything budget amendment is not set to happen without this council's action. And that's, I wanted Jerry to separate this out so that we could look at this, because this isn't said and done or agreed to by anybody. This is asking for additional, $198,000 in a budget amendment that has to come from somewhere to do these things. We could choose to not do that or push that to somewhere else, or we could look at, the rollover fund setup the way it's been, whether we want to do those before we go into a new budget year. And then I think the other part is like, this is the one that's more like, what do we want to make sure that gets done in 27 and what's not necessarily a must in 27? And maybe some of that comes off 26. The other thing to think about, which is a discussion point, I think is, I guess my vision for, as you change this, comes with the adjustment and change associated with how necessarily historically, like, budgeting has been done and rollover has been done and things like that. And more so that budgeting is executed in a manner focused on operations and operational costs with minimal savings for projects, and all of the money left over after we pay for all the operations and budgeting goes into a pot that then gets put to play on these lists to fund these projects prioritized by the council at the council's discretion. Does that mean, hey, you go back and you look at how much rollover does Parks have, or EMS have, or Fire have, or Pool has, and you move that all into the capital bucket, and then you start funding their projects like that or not? I think that's a council-based, question. But I guess that's the way I understood talking to some other cities, other mayors, that's the way they do it, as common as, hey, you build your budget to what you need to operate. Tell us what you need from capital, and we're gonna put the full weight of all leftover funds to execute the capital projects that the council prioritizes with the help of the department heads' recommendations and needs. Which is somewhat of a fundamental change to their budgeting independently, if you will, or capital improvement planning independently. One scar alarm's going off.
So when you say you're saying that this is a vote to use $11 million?
No. We don't have $11 million. $11 million was basically what we did, just for an oversight, for those that are new. Jerry started this process by going to all department heads and asking for the needs that they have inside of their departments. There is some projects that have been ongoing in the community that are on this list. At that point, when you total all those costs up, that's like, comes out to $11 million worth of projects. We can't afford to do $11 million of projects. So the discussion is, what projects can we do? And how do we fund them?
The resolution or?
We're not passing anything outside of, it's just essentially a working document like this. I don't know, maybe you can find this one and pull it up on the screen, but this is basically.
Trust the process and $11 million.
Yeah,
And,
yeah.
I've only been here in Slater for a month, but.
Totally fair.
Yeah, they're appreciated.
Yeah. And needed.
I was wondering if I needed to tuck tail and run.
This is just the starting process of our trying to filter through all the things we need and prioritize those things to determine what we.
The board is, we don't have an edge or.
So
Could be Carter I.
that is
There,
what,
it must be yours.
that's essentially what we're talking about. This is not, this is kind of like a
Yeah.
wish list. It's got
Combination
needs
of
and
those.
wishes and everything.
Planning,
Yeah,
Plan,
it's planning.
we'll get there.
planning for future growth, development, improvements.
Yeah, so
Just so you know, the budget last year was 3.5 million approximately. So
yeah,
that's when I say we've got work to do, that's what this is all about.
No, and I.
Trying to
knew that
figure out
was way
what we can
above, I
afford.
just- I didn't
Yeah.
understand what you were,
I think a couple of the things.
because I just wanted to understand.
I know we've asked a little bit about, hey, what's left from I know one of the questions that Craig asked was like, how much free capital's there? I think it's a question we're all kind of wondering. I just for simplicity looked at and eliminated your water, your sewer on Lindsay's sheet from our claims. And if you take out, water, sewer, TIF, LMI, those buckets that are kind of the bigger buckets, you can get down to about 3.6 million when you take away those funds that you're most likely going to keep the fund dollars in those funds to pay for future existing projects. Those are, obviously Craig's established that maybe you transfer some of that for something, but
It'd have to be a real outlier. I mean,
But it'd have
those are statutory, supposed to stay in there.
funds to fund their funds,
Yeah.
their needs. And I think we all agree that there's needs there. But so, what's that?
Philosophically, I'm not sure if you was gonna have this bucket. Then we should have that, okay, if not, all the little. So saying that we need to hold money back.
Thank
And we do. I mean, you're hearing regulatory, sure, you can go through steps to pull money. You can use revenue from sewer to pay for a new sidewalk. Sure, there's a practicality to do that, but the duty would be to use the revenues from sewer and water to maintain and improve the water and sewer and keep it functional and saving for the replacements.
And that.
We're already underwater on
Saying
that.
we can't do it, that's not a fact. We can move the Lindsay, what are we pushing, $1 million in
1.7.
1.7 sewer?
Yeah.
That's excessive since we just did a major project. So that's a discussion I think we need to have as a council of how much do we want to happen with it.
Well, you just saw the recommendation to spend 1.3 of that. So
No, I saw a recommendation to spend 40,000 of that.
no, the 1.3 million is to pay off the debt.
Yeah, the debt.
Oh, sorry.
So
At the-
I mean, while there's 1.7 there, it's like, boom, we go execute that strategy to not move sewer rates. I wouldn't say that, 400 grand's excessive in there, so. I think you look at it that way and it's like those funds, we know the water fund, even with our increase, won't pay for the new water plant. So we already know that we'll be forced to bond for a new water plant at some point. So I don't think I would ask this council not to consider those as like revenue sources for projects outside of what the collection of those revenues are for. Just based on our
And
circumstances.
that's certainly your right to ask, but it's not a decision that's made. We do have the flexibility if we choose to.
Oh, certainly, but
I
I
wanna make sure we're clear.
am hearing consensus.
I've always heard that they're basically a statutory that you collect it when you collect it off your water flow meter, it goes to water and you don't touch it and it doesn't go into anything else.
And then you have it, but there's not law. That's the part that I was previously misunderstood.
In the audit and everything else, they're kept separate and referred to as enterprise funds, not
Yes.
Something that,
Yeah, I think it'd be
Unless the council
catastrophic.
Specifically moves the funds
Yeah.
elsewhere because they have excess.
And I think it'd be catastrophic to pull those funds to pave the parking lot at the sports complex, right? Like that would be irresponsible in my perspective, in our financial
But
position.
that's your opinion. There's
that'd be,
5 opinions that have to be
Yep.
on that.
I know, and I'm hearing consensus that, hey, we don't move, we're not wanting to move money out of water and sewer to fund other projects outside of water and
And I'm
sewer.
not saying we should, we shouldn't.
So those
We need to
two.
have the facts correct that we can. Doesn't mean we should, it just means that we can. I want to be clear on what we can and can't do. That comes before what we should or should not do.
Lindsay, do you have any input on that?
I mean, I recommend not moving it around.
Yep.
That's my recommendation.
Well, once it's gone,
It's gone.
Then you're gonna be
It's
looking
hard to get
at
it back.
increasing rates again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So fundamentally, I guess, Taylor, you brought up, that's one of the things we gotta talk about is. We have had a long history, I don't know how long, of each of the departments is supposed to save some money back for their own capital. And we've discussed whether that capital should be centralized. So that instead of telling somebody you have to wait 10 years and save $10,000 a year to get your $100,000. No, we can prioritize you to the top of the list and you get your $100,000 now. So I guess philosophically, we need to have that discussion so that as Jerry and Lindsay take the department heads through their budgeting process. They know which way to do it.
I believe the first step that this council should establish is how much of a reserve does this council think the city should hold on hand? First, as a starting point, how much is this council, with all the experience this council has, comfortable with? We agree that this is the minimum threshold that we should ever hold for reserve operations or emergent,
What's typical in cities across the state? I don't know.
it might be not the option to have a reserve.
I
No
never
funds to
had
do
it.
that.
I never had it. We always just save CDs back or something
I-
for new fire trucks or ambulances or.
A past council person did tell
That's what
me
we did.
they were, this was in the Branstad years, so some time ago, they were nervous about holding too high of an amount, a reserve amount that the state, what government was looking at falling back if you had too much.
This is our issue.
They might do it if you have none.
Well,
For what it's
where's
worth,
that?
the councilman for dummies that League of Cities did, they suggested 25 to 50%. But then,
Oh.
as I learned more, I realized, I don't know if they meant of your total budget of 3.5. Or your general fund versus enterprise. I wasn't smart enough time to ask the question, so I don't know if that 25 to 50 meant, but that's the number they threw out. I would personally lean towards of the total 3.5 million budget, but. I suppose you get to narrow.
So they would recommend 25% of, if we
25
have,
to 50.
if we have a $3 million budget, then they would say 1.5 million was plenty to have in reserve.
Points, yeah, 7,
Mhm.
yeah,
Yeah.
5,
Well, we have more than that.
1.75. Yeah. I think that's a limit that this council will need, I mean, I think we really need to think about what that is. Because to me, and the way my brain works, that would be the first point you'd identify before you go and look at everything else, cause you just say right off the top, this is how much has to stay. Then you work backwards to, well, this is how much is there, you can get into the rollover fund, we know about how much is there. But if we know what our minimum thresholds are, we at least have that starting point from an operation standpoint, then you apply everything else from there. And I think this council has enough experience going through bad years and tough years to good years to feel like, hey, we'd want to have this. We also, I think, analyze, and you analyze, I think we have a very low debt limit right now in relationship to what our bonding capacity is. So we could issue revenue bonds, backed by property tax dollars or by revenue dollars to fund, not property tax dollars, revenue dollars by sewer, water, street funds for street water sewer projects. So we could bond or borrow for those. And so maybe your reserve is impacted by that tool because we're not maxed on our bonding capacity. But I'm curious what this council, what their appetite is, because I think it'd be nice to establish that before a new council comes in based on your tenure.
I like the 1 year's budget personally, but
Well, the other thing that you didn't address, that we've talked about a couple of times, is the current legislature's desire to continue to cut what we have available. And so when you look at that light, it's really nice to be sitting where we are versus if you're literally trying to budget each year and then they cut what you can put into property tax.
Yeah,
Talk about being hamstrung, you'll never get to any of the things on.
yeah,
those
then the
lists.
projects go away,
Yeah.
operations is surviving.
Yeah, so I would, in the current environment the legislature is, I want to have as much of a cushion as I could there because I feel like it's gonna continually getting clawed back.
Yeah. Sue?
I like, if I have to say a number, I'm gonna say 1 year's budget. I think, it would be interesting to look historically, like where did our surplus come from? Like, have we been steady over the years? Have we been just steadily climbing? Did we have a big influx at some point? It'd be interesting to know.
I think it's been a big influx.
I have that, yes.
Okay, well, I'll get that from Craig.
Yeah, it's all in that master file. I think I've got 15 years worth of it.
I would be very interested to see that.
Yeah.
I think a general mindset change about let's do some things and have some show some progress and.
Yeah.
And have some nice improvements in our town because we can.
Mhm.
And I think we've got a mindset that we can't and we have to save up here and save up for the future. Well, the future is now. And I'd like to see us think about.
I think that's uniform.
Down and, having some progress.
Craig?
Over the last 2 years, I've tried to learn the difference, personal finance and city. Personally, I wanna have a ton of money in my pocket. But as a city, I think it's remiss to take your money and put it in our pocket and hold it for something that might happen. So, personally, I'd be scared to death if I had 25 or 50% in my pocket for myself. But I think as a city, I think 50% of our total expense, not just the general expense. So if our budget is roughly 3.5 million, I wanna have 1.75 is our minimum reserve. So if you throw in all of the taxes that we collect, taxes and rates, then that gives us a pretty good cushion. I think anything more than that is that's on our part. So, but again, it's personally versus public. No, I don't want to be at 50% of my personal budget. Absolutely not.
So let me ask a clarifying question then of the group. When we talk about 1.75 in reserves and we talk about the enterprise accounts. And we talk about, if, for example, right now, if we say 1.75 is the figure, we could spend everything but the sewer fund at 1.75, assuming we don't pay off the debt. Do you balance that, Lindsay, through enterprise accounts? Do you fund the annual if it's 50% of the annual sewer operating, that's your reserve in sewer and the rest is reserved for sewer projects or whatever projects, or could in theory legally be moved. And you do that by enterprise account do you do 50% by your enterprise account in terms of your reserve?
I have no idea. I wouldn't know.
Right, I guess that's.
To me, your enterprise accounts, so your sewer, we've got 3 bonds that are, and one of them's enormous, so I
Yep.
think to have those. Although there's a big surplus, what looks like a surplus there right now, a lot of that is because we paid all of the expenses leading up to. An installation of the sewage treatment plant out of our budget. And then just got that $1 million paid to us and have so far let it sit there. That's what that $1 million is, it's sitting in the sewage
Agreed.
treatment plant.
Yeah,
And so that really needs to stay there and to me, and be used for the sewage treatment plant when it has such enormous amounts of bonds pledged against it. Water treatment, anything you can even develop as a surplus in there. I got a water plant that's already.
Yeah.
Almost twice. Closer to double what its expected and engineered lifespan is. And so that's gonna be an immediate need. It's gonna take bonding to do that. And so anything you can build up in there, I think you gotta leave that alone and keep that out of whatever you're doing for general fund or whatever your wish list is to get done. You know, we don't have anything in streets. And our streets are in terrible shape. And so, you know, so if you're gonna rob from if you're gonna rob an enterprise fund, I would rob it for another enterprise fund, not for a general fund wish list kind of a thing. You know, we also made commitments to a lot of those funds were put and supposed to be categorized like for the library community center. I don't know where that sits in terms of full amounts or whether those have been actually moved into a fund dedicated to those or not, but that was what was decided.
Yeah,
And done by resolution there.
and that is in that is in a fund, separated in a fund.
Okay.
And
So
I
that's
think
not included in
that's included in the total cash balance of the six.
Yeah, it's 304,000.
Is sitting in an account separated
Right.
earmarked to that. But the same thing is like when you go to the general fund then, so we have that next tier of that where you have, I think Chad has $90,000 for EMS.
Mhm.
Parks, I think, has 90,000 in rollover. So you have that tier of it as well. And so,
So same thing along those lines. The other thing that we got is what's the appetite for a pool? Because again, our pool is beyond its likely useful life. I can tell you 10 years ago, we thought we were gonna be lucky to have it for another year or two, that a wall could kick out of that at any time. And we spent a lot of money and received the whole engineer's errors and omissions policy for that
Mhm.
pool, and so far we've been really lucky, but that could be that's a heart attack waiting to happen. And when that happens, it really shouldn't even be built where it's at. So you're talking about having to move it, resite it and move it completely away from that location to some other location because of the soil types that's around it. So you're not talking about a small project, you're not talking about a few $1,000,000 to go back in and rebuild it where it is. You gotta move it and recite it completely in that process. So if this town's gonna have a pool, there better be any, you know, it's gonna be an incredible bond to ever replace that pool. So I think you gotta look at some of those as what you're gonna categorize as wants and what you're gonna categorize as needs. And then we've heard from the public with the vote last month that they don't want us to be able to use sales tax dollars to bond against that. I don't think that was very well understood. What that was really gonna accomplish or what that was gonna mean, because that's gonna mean that for all the different departments. I think it was all lumped in again as a library community center issue. So. You got some big replacement needs coming in terms of the water plant and the pool.
yeah.
In a few years that are.
And we're gonna hear some from hopefully public feedback on some of those big ones to help us drive where to prioritize some of those. But I think from a reserve standpoint, I guess I would be interested as you evaluate or calculate what free capital looks like.
Right.
A projection of what free capital looks like. And maybe we need to define what that is, but assuming a reserve of 50% of our annual budget of 3.5 million or 3.6 million. And 100% of that. To gauge those differences in terms of what free capital is in terms of that, I think gives us an idea of that gap. When you bring it to us, Lindsay. And I would say in free capital, I would include, I know you found the rollover fund, but I think we want that classified as, hey, that's free, in theory, free capital. Sure, it's in a rollover account right now, but for capital projects, it's available monies that could be deployed for capital projects.
Correct. The other thing, depending on the project, I mean, you're not gonna receive any donations to build a water plant. But you might receive donations that are gonna build a pool. And so if you don't have money that's already established and in that fund, then you're not eligible to apply for grants that might come along with that. And nobody wants to be the first $1,000 volunteer in to a $6 million project, thinking that it's not gonna happen in my kid's lifetime, let alone mine. So,
Yeah,
so having some of those balances there, for those specific purposes, it makes it a lot easier to go after some of those grants. Even though you're never gonna reach them $11 million. In any of those.
Jerry, I heard you say you want to go back to department heads on fiscal year 27.
Well, we're gonna be talking about both. I'm just looking at large capital equipment with, it's about 45,000 compared to fiscal year 27's request or ask is just under 400,000
For large equipment.
for large equipment alone in 27.
Mm-hmm. 385, okay. Yeah. Yeah, the only there's some big there's a couple big variables in there, right? Obviously, but wait a second. Can I ask on the 385, so for example, in your fiscal year 27, that's large equipment, it's on one of the back sides. So it starts with Public Works open trailer and moves down. So let me just ask a question. Library chairs, tables, shelving, right? The Friends have those monies already, 150. That is not in the 385.
That would be a part of that.
Okay, so since those monies, when we have the funding sources Friends, those monies should not be in there, right? That's where that money was gonna come from?
Well, we're kind of identified funding
Right.
sources, so.
So we do
it
have,
would
that's how
be
much we need,
subtracted.
but as far as city budget wise, we wouldn't need that portion from the city. AV, they would grant, so we wouldn't need that. So that number, maybe in terms of property tax, local sales tax, road use dollars, that number's less probably.
When you talk about what's in what the Friends of the Library currently have, doesn't mean they've pledged that for chairs, tables and shelf,
Jen's here.
right? It is
Yeah,
separate from what was available as in the bank that could be pledged for a grant, that would be part of a project for grant.
It's part of what's in the bank, about their original goal, was to raise up for that.
But was that
should
for
be
the current?
subtracted.
I don't think this is gonna be additional to the. Whatever the project is, like, I think you got two numbers, but.
I'm not sure what you mean. Let's double up.
For example, whatever the main project cost, that would be rolled into that.
On the first page of the draft, where we have the library at 7 million. That 150 is in that 7 million.
That's a duplication.
That
Total project cost. That, the library AV community tables, exterior seating tables, like that's gonna follow whatever the library project is. Probably in terms of year of execution, but I just wanted to clarify, like if we say for fiscal year 27, we need 385, we need 385 out of city, revenue sources. Or we need X out of city revenue sources and we're gonna seek outside revenue sources for the others. And I'm hearing outside. So then that makes the number a lot different, right? If you take 190 out of 385, well, now the 27 capital for large equipment doesn't seem as crazy. Small equipment at 8,000, not so crazy.
Right, and some of these things have ranges.
I guess, so it's the same idea, these table chairs and shelving, was that intended for the current library facility?
new-
Or
for the
with
new.
the assumption that there was gonna be a new facility
For the
that
new,
needed tables, chairs and shelving?
Says new building.
just for new.
Yeah,
Over first, so you find a new building.
I think that was assumption on the new building. Just like the open. Well, that's not on it, is it? Or the next one, Public Works tractor trade estimate $40,000, UTV trade $15,000, 70,000 mower sports complex, but do you really need a mower for the sports complex in 27? that's,
So we're gonna have grass in
you
26.
know, that's, well, that's, I know, the question is, can it be mowed by one of the mowers we do have today before you have an official mower for the complex? I mean, those are the questions we'll push on.
It was his plan to have that once the complex is complete, so yes, your point is valid.
Yeah. So I think those are the things we're gonna have to weed out as we look through this. Or push on.
You still have projects out there that don't have dates.
Yeah. And I think that's where the real work, I guess, comes into, like, all this large, small equipment and stuff. Some of those larger projects, like, the reality is, you know, if a sports complex, you may have to go ask for property tax dollars in a bond vote to execute the final part of it, because you can't save your way to it or self-perform your way to it. You may have to do the same thing for the pool, I think, like Ken was saying. So I think as we identify those funding sources, you start to look at those and determine whether you can go, you know, can you pass a bond and use tax dollars to build that, and use cash to build this or that?
There may be grants available too.
And grants to supplement, obviously, along the way, just I think, which was kind of the target and effort on the community center libraries. Get to a threshold so you can try grants
Yeah, but you gotta have that threshold of money set aside.
to
before
get
you
there.
Apply for grants.
Yep.
So if you don't have that in your budget, you know, if you don't have that sitting somewhere as a
Yeah,
as a account, as a savings in cash, you can't even write the grant application. So you gotta keep an eye towards that as you go to spend down your, what's looked at as a surplus.
I'm a bit confused where we're at for actions. Cause you're gonna start doing budgets next week.
We're working on budgeting
And I
and
don't know how you can do budgets until we know whether capital is included in expense budgets or capital is separate. So I guess to me, that's one of the,
I don't think you're gonna get it fleshed out for the 27 budget.
well, I don't know
I
how.
don't think you're gonna be done with a capital improvement plan that hadn't been started and get that done before you start doing your budget.
I agree, but philosophically, I guess what I was saying is just.
No.
What do the department heads need to do? Do they need to give you expenses or expenses plus capital?
both.
What
We need to go.
departments did, I mean, we were told last year not to put capital improvement stuff in there,
yeah, it was operational last year for,
so. I mean, if they're actually going through with what they were told to do last year, it should be operational.
I think it should just be operational. I think we're in agreement with starting this process that a department's budget should be, this is what we need to operate, or right? And then whatever's left over after the operations is what the capital budget is for that year. We're talking about past year's budget or past year capital monies to be maybe put to work over the next couple of years to execute larger projects or more projects. From a budget perspective, I'm expecting the budgets that come to us for review and the new council to review, those will strictly be, you know, their operational budget, maybe with some cushion for a concern here or there, but really the capital projects should be on this list, and then we should look at what's outside of operational, at what that bucket is left, and determine how much of that money in the fiscal year can support the capital list, and then go back to what's sitting in the leftover funds and what projects on these lists are important and how soon and what's the funding pathway.
And I'm fine with that. I actually prefer that as long as everybody plays by the same rule. Last year we had 3 exceptions. So as long as Jerry, Lindsay, as the people managing the finances, as long as everybody plays by the same rules, so that Chad doesn't have money. You did not put any capital in last year.
Oh, put capital in like that.
That's what I thought, so that everybody has to follow that same set of rules, so Chad doesn't get set behind somebody else who's been.
Capital is part of operating.
I think that's what the direction is that the budgets are operational, what it costs to operate. And the capital projects, including equipment, will be determined then, you know, first in what's left over in the budget estimates, and then, you know, supplemented by whatever we determine is the excess of funds available, and we'll apply those based on the projects.
So Jerry, Lindsay, 4 council people, everybody's clear on that, or do we need a resolution, what do we need? Nothing?
No, I'm sure I feel real comfortable with the fact that the whole capital improvement plan hinges on what's left over from The year.
What we don't use to
year's
operate.
operational budget. I mean, you're not gonna fund any capital
I'm
project.
not saying, I'm not saying it all does, Ken, but I think that's where you have to start, and then let's say everything we have today is reserves. So we gotta look at it on an annual basis, how much do we need to operate, how much capital's left, okay, maybe that's where your you know, your streets, your large equipment or equipment goes in, and you look at where you're at, and then you go, okay, well, we don't have enough, well, we're gonna have to pull from reserves to do these street projects or not. Or we don't have enough to expand or improve what the library is today, we need to put capital there, we've got part of it raised, we need to do something to give it to that. I think then you start talking about the reserve buckets and how much is there. But you get as far as you can in one budget year in your lens point or viewpoint. With prioritizing those needs that are of those smaller nature, and then you look at. What are we taking out of reserves to do what? And is there consensus among the council members at that time, and is that what makes sense? Hopefully, you know, by the time you get into deeper parts of that, you're probably talking about, you know, you're probably talking about a year from now where you've had comprehensive planning and now your capital improvement plan becomes a little more real. And you're deploying more of those excess funds versus like between now and July. Like,
I just think that, I mean, I'm not sure when you budget for operational stuff, there's gonna be a lot of extras. I don't think there's gonna be a lot of extra money left in those budgets.
and I think that will be the clear point then is,
Yeah.
okay, well, your project list is gonna dwindle dramatically.
Yeah.
And you're gonna really have to ask tough questions about.
Yep.
How big is it needed, where, why? And how's it funded? I think is what you boil down to, and that reality might be a harsh reality. But I think unless you get to that point,
Who's defining that?
if you don't get to that point, how can you go pull reserves and start spending it on things if you really don't have that clarity between what's operationally needed? And
How do you define operational? That's what I'm trying to figure out.
I would say
Does it
anything
not
on this
include
list to me
budgets?
is like not operational. I mean, very minimal. When you get into, okay, you gotta do televising of lines or you gotta do stuff like that, but I think operational for the most part, like. Most departments can say, we know how much our salaries are, we know how much materials we use, we know these things. Is there unexpected? Yeah, well, that's what our plans are put in place for to do that, but. I'm not expecting it to be like, hey, operationally, we need a new dump trailer, so operationally, it's in my operation budget. I'm thinking more, it's like operationally, we know we do rock at the parks. So I'm budgeting this much for rock at the parks, cause we do that every year. I guess I'm not expecting, and most of it always comes down to Public Works, obviously it's the largest department, but. I'm kind of anticipating that it's what we know the reoccurring and regular predictable expenses are. Is that, I mean, is that your opinion on operational and thoughts on operational?
I agree, Ken, you were concerned, make sure.
Well, I just heard several times that the capital improvement plan was all about excesses from the annual budget, and
I'm not sure.
I know how my operational budget goes, and there's not a lot of extras left at the end of the year, certainly not enough to fund for a capital improvement.
I don't think I heard that it was extras. I think I heard more that it was the larger expenditures.
Well,
Right, but I heard that the money to pay for those capital improvements plans was coming from the extra and what's left over from the budget,
I think
right?
that's,
I heard that several times.
yeah,
Whether it's grant.
yes, that's what it is.
Different way.
I'm thinking about it as revenue. Required expenses, aka operation costs, leftover. What's there? What projects can you accomplish? We're fortunate because we can dig back into reserves because we know we have some reserves. And that's where what's the minimum amount needed? Well, now we know what our gap is. Well, now we can deploy that over how many years, but I don't think unless we get to a balanced budget or a separated budget of just purely operating costs. And where we run, I'm not disagreeing with you. We might find out that no, our operation costs really are close to.
Yeah.
$4 million like our revenue is, and we might say capital projects are gonna have to be tight unless, and then we can tell the public that and say, hey, now we want your local sales tax dollars because we want to do these two projects and we're gonna issue bonds with your approval to do these two projects. Otherwise, we're not gonna be able to proceed on any of these projects, then we can go ask for that, or we can do a general obligation bond for project XYZ, because we don't have other funds. It doesn't happen without the funding of this. And we have that plan lined out versus right now, I think how much is left over on an annual basis after we just basic operation?
So on your basic operation, you said nothing that's on here. What about stuff that dates out for like first and fire? I mean, if they're,
Well, that will have, that, I would assume that that would fall, if it's a
How do you
material
stuff?
that has to be covered in there.
well, that's like.
And you know-
AEDs that, cause it's timed out, like they can't use it anymore, it's so many years. So does that go in this year's operational budgets, cause it has to be done?
I think we just have to trust our
Like,
department
years,
heads
10
at that
years.
point.
Well, that's what I'm asking, like, that's what
Yeah.
they're gonna have to know.
Yeah, I
Like,
mean,
is that
that's my
operational
point.
cost?
How are you gonna define what?
Or is that-
I mean, are we
Yeah.
gonna rely on Jerry and Lindsay to give us the definition as to what will be operational? For that year? I mean, let's say we need new swings and it costs $5,000 for swings, I mean, I'm just using this as an example, right? I mean, is that operational or are we looking at, and AEDs is a good example. I mean, at that point, is that operational that year?
Well, I would,
That year the
Or is
batteries
it
are bad.
operational? How do you define that? Who's gonna define it?
And you use your equipment in your operation every day, every week, so that needs to be part of the.
well, I guess you tell me, Jerry, because then you're defeating the capital improvement plan for a
That-
large portion of the capital improvement needs.
That's why we're going through.
And so that's what they're asking, I guess, is if you want the departments to budget for their own equipment needs for operations, then that changes the whole way I view the capital improvement plan. If Mark's gonna budget 40 grand for a new tractor next year inside of his budget he brings to us because it's an operational need, I think that's defeating the purpose of what the capital improvement plan is. In the, in the sense that now the council isn't having input in whether the tractor is a necessity and a must-have, or it's really good to have and we like having it and need it.
And I agree with that if you're gonna go this way, but what I was getting at was more of the stuff that would be more for fire and versus is it
And I would ask,
after this many years, you can't use it. So does that go into operational for those departments?
I think
Year?
that's where we know that that has to be funded in that capital year. We know if Chad tells me I have to have an AED by 2027, then we know we have to put, no matter what, that's a red alert top funded need because he can't operate without it at that point.
Like fire, they do their gear, they do so many sets of gear.
If we're not gonna be able to operate without it legally,
Yeah.
then it's a problem. It
those
needs to be
four or
on,
five firemen.
we gotta address it.
So that would be.
It seems expensive to call it consumable. I think that counts as a consumable.
Yeah, that's what I was
Lifespan of
getting
which,
at, yeah, there's some of those things that.
So
are
fire equipment, I think is a consumable.
Still-
A skid loader, I don't say is consumable.
Exactly, I agree.
Okay,
Yeah,
so
something
that's kind of a weird definition, but
There's gonna be a line by line, like, when we sit and meet with you, line by line, we're gonna have to try and determine at that point. I think it's gonna be messy for a little while. I think we do.
I think it is.
I think so too.
But literally, and so if you guys are wanting increased input on. The department's budgets, it's gonna be Jerry and Lindsay and I sitting down line by line and determining whether, Mine is much simpler.
Yeah.
Right, in the overall scheme of things, but.
Well, a lot of your costs on an annual basis are going to fall into what are probably gonna be capital projects.
Yes.
And because Mark's gonna estimate the other half of your park budget,
So, I mean.
right?
Mark's got his own maintenance budget.
So you're only gonna be as effective as what we
Still
give.
saying, These guys have got budgets that, they're gonna have to define this and without some sort of rules established,
You're exactly right. It's gonna be
it's
messy.
gonna be.
Be a little less messy next year and even a little less messy the next year.
And the reality is that I'm a little skeptical as well, because the rollovers have come from years of putting money away and not spending it. So what do we won't really know what that looks like if we actually have excess, until I guess we develop these budgets and determine.
And I think that's our duty to know whether we're, operating in the red or the green. Right now, it feels like, well, yeah, we're operating in the green. It's great, but we don't know how much in the green we're operating because there's budgets with capital outlay here and there, and we don't know I just think we've got to separate those two things, and then we need to let the council elected by the residents through the department head's expertise and the community feedback, try to do the best we can at prioritizing and executing as many of those things as expedient as we can.
At this point, we're going through this process, but 26, 27, we're talking about all of that, so who's doing the prioritizing? So are you gonna kick that back down to us to determine whether we really feel like that needs to be in 27? You know,
That's what
at the
we
end of the day, we're in 27, right? Somebody's gotta go, this is first, this is second, this is third, this is fourth. Who's making that decision and at what point in time?
The city council,
2027's budget year starts.
we should be.
You guys are
I
gonna
mean,
have a discussion and go, here's the things we're really gonna do for 27, and here's the stuff we're gonna kick down the road.
we really should be. Is it gonna be perfect this year? No, but next year at this time, I hope there's a lot more clarity to it. Because we have worked on some process and timing and strategized around it, but I think ultimately the people, in my opinion, that should make this decision are the city council and the voting members of city council. They should decide whether we should get a new slide at the pool or a new skid loader for public works. Based upon all the due diligence that the department heads have provided to us on the whys. But ultimately, I think that's the whole point of the government, is that's why you elected the city council members, is to decide whether that is or isn't a priority. By consuming the information from the staff and
Yeah, I get
experts,
it.
and
But
so I think that's who ultimately does, but I would certainly, and I think our council has in the past said, hey, Jonathan, if you can only get one of those three things you said for 27, what is it? Well, it's this. Okay, well, I think we'd follow that advice if the funds were there. But everybody has a lot of things that they need or want, you know, and I think it's, how do you start doing some of them that are on a larger scale, not a $40,000 improvement, but how about a $3 million project? How do we
Yeah.
do that?
I'm just not sure where you draw the line. I mean, when Public Works needs a tractor, they need a tractor, not a discussion about a tractor. And not a planning process for a tractor or a dump truck or snowplow. When they need it, they need it. And a lot of that comes up a little quicker than what it might have been in the capital improvement plan. So,
And I think,
Coming from an equipment heavy background, I don't agree. It gets more expensive to maintain, so suddenly my operation,
Yeah.
I come back and I say, either buy me a new tractor, or you're gonna give me $10,000 to keep the old one running. It's a give and take. I had to go through that crap every year on which projects were good and which ones, well, it's a great project, but theirs is better, so they get it, you don't. And I was way too often on the you don't side.
but and I understand that, but if by the same token, when you throw them all into one pot, then the other thing you end up happening is that the swings and the slide are always gonna end up in the short end of the stick, which is just what's happened in the past. And so, you know, when you need an AED or you need a slide, I'm sorry, the AED is gonna win every time.
and
And so
I hear you and I
I'd
agree.
rather budget for rather let them have their budget, even if a part of that is capital improvement. And let the experts decide and the council make the big picture decisions and not micromanage each department.
I don't think this is micromanagement, because I think sometimes the cost of a large project is being expended
Well,
by a department head when it's not maybe a 100% necessity.
well, and maybe another way to look at this is as a percentage of what their operational budget is. So when you look at a $40,000 tractor, sounds like a big item compared to a $20,000 swing set. But it doesn't even scratch the surface of the total public works budget. So maybe if the budgetary amount, if what they need is something that's a percentage of their budget, maybe that's again, a decision that they make versus city council trying to make all of the decisions and being here 4 hours.
I think that's the
Make
way
a
we've been,
decision.
I think that's the way we've been doing it, and that's why we have a surplus and no large project to speak of. That's my opinion, is we've let the departments do that, and that's why, you know, Chad's got $90,000 and he needs an ambulance and a new building and no pathway to either one of them really, independently. Unless he continues to up his capital every year to 25 and 30 and 40 and, you know, as big as he can get, as big as council will approve without questioning or pushing back. I think independently, it's like never gonna get a new space. The library, how much can we dedicate towards a library improvement project of some sort? I don't know if we can answer that. Honestly, we know there's funds available to that, but how much can we give? Well, if And not that Mark does this, I think he's been very responsible with his rotation and maintenance of things, so it's not to say that he's not, but could we challenge him to live without 40 grand a year because that got us a larger project closer to be executing 3 years in a row on 3 different items? I think that would be a good sacrifice, and I think it's one he's willing to make if it means more capital improvements, larger scale capital improvements being able to be executed. And then we're gonna have to go ask the public to put the bill for some of the large ones. I don't want it to be viewed as, hey, this is a micromanagement thing, because I don't think that's the intent at all. Will it come off that way in that? But that's I feel like that's the elected official's job, is to push and challenge. Is it really need? Is it a necessity? We don't have to get nitpicky, but to try to make sure we can accomplish the bigger projects the residents are asking us to and are hungry for.
All right, obviously, we got some difference of opinion. Jerry, Lindsay, do you have enough information from us to be able to do expense budgets?
Operational.
Yeah, it's operation, yes, right.
I'd love to have a definition, but I think I have a pretty good idea
Okay.
of what's being requested.
Cause I don't think we're gonna get it resolved tonight, yeah.
I was like, what is this?
Chad, Zach, you're here. I mean, what's your department heads? Jen, you're here. John's here. We got we basically have every department represented. Fire has somebody here. Like, does that make sense?
I always do anyway, so that's.
Jonathan?
Yeah, I mean, my only thought is, we don't have a lot of operational, but our operational is an Eagle Scout coming in for funding to do something. Now that's capital improvement, but it's not. So I push back that we probably need a fund.
Some discretionary money.
funds, hopefully more than what the CAN fund gives us. I mean, it's what we lived on is the CAN fund. But we also have a couple of areas that we have continually gotten a very small amount that we can put towards something like that. We're just gonna need some capital to do operational things.
Yeah.
It would be very.
And you're very unique in that sense, in the way that you're a committee operating under the council's direction, but I think you'll get if you're planned, and I don't.
Yeah, I think it'll all look better.
I think my issue will come with. I budget for worst case scenarios on my medical equipment and street supplies, my durables and things like that. And right now I've got a really good agreement with Mary Greeley, but that's gonna change if their budget changes too. So I don't know what I'm gonna actually be spending city funds on.
Yeah.
Trying to get it free off of Mary Greeley. And they could change their program and not even tell them. Somebody try to do a supply request and, oh, we don't do that anymore. So then I have to come back and figure out how to fund a medical supply.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you feel like in that scenario, you could, in your operational budget, include enough cushion to protect you from that incident for 30 to 45 days before council could execute, or 60 days to execute a budget amendment to refund you if needed?
Budget for years, yeah.
Okay, so you don't really necessarily have operational, like you don't have really major concerns about what we're asking for.
Depends on how lean you try to make us get our budgets. If you want us down to, hey, you're down to a couple $100, then yeah, I'm gonna have concerns.
I think I think there's complete trust in what you say you need to operate. There may be a question about what is this for, okay? But I don't think anybody here is gonna question or really nitpick greatly what you say your operational costs are.
It's gonna be different and challenging to at certain times. But we'll figure out how to make it work. Also, we got a credit card and all this stuff.
Zach?
I mean, public works side's gonna be the most variable. But we could have a terrible winter and through fuel and sand, and we could have multiple main breaks, we could have no main breaks. There's a lot of unknowns on the public works side.
Plus you could have an issue with the pool that Ken mentioned.
Yeah, I just think the reminder is like, we know there's emergency costs. We've created a purchasing policy that supports emergency scenarios. We will amend the budget to backfill those emergency scenarios that fit within the policy
And keeping a certain reserve.
and keeping a certain reserve so that we never get out of line. If you know, hey, over the last 5 years, we've done, 8 main breaks a year. Well, then let's budget for 8 main breaks.
Yeah.
And just
budget.
budget for that. And nobody here, I don't think, has ground to stand on to say you don't need 8 main
No,
breaks. You know what I
I'm
mean?
not saying It's, that,
Yeah,
but
I know
I'm
you're
saying
not.
it Are very, I mean, we're so weather dependent.
It's hard to predict.
On everything that,
But I think
Yeah.
that's a great example, Zach, of the beauty of switching how we're budgeting. Cause, if we usually have 5 major storms and one year we have 10. I would rather have you budget for 5
Yeah.
or 6. And then when you come to us in January and say, we've already had our average, we're gonna need some more sand and salt and whatever. Great, that's what the big pot
The reserve is for it.
reserve is for.
You get a lot more budget amendments.
There could potentially be more budget amendments.
I feel like that's a more efficient way to budget.
yeah, you just average,
Yeah.
last.
Exactly.
years, so, I mean, you can go about that, I guess.
Like, I don't want you to budget for 10.
Yeah.
Yeah, and are at the same time have to keep that reserve and not spend all the excess funds. That's why to me, it's like, it feels like once you get this started where you have the operational budget, you've identified what your reserve is. You see what you have left over. Now you know your gap.
Well, a lot of it, we just can't budget for anything. Where, I mean, you're more than likely, you're gonna go, there's a possibility of going over. Whether you budget like they used to, or
Yeah.
budget the way you're talking about now.
And I think the other part of it too is in the reporting then on a monthly basis, viewing the Simple City report that shows us where you're at year to date on your budget. So we know from a council's perspective, we see the claims, we see where you're at year to date in your budget. I guess that should arise us to the question of you're already 60% through your budget 2 months into this.
Oh, yeah.
We're gonna have to amend.
I could have a plow truck burn up,
Yeah,
all of a sudden.
Now you're renting one. yeah.
200K.
Yeah.
It can happen quickly.
And I think that's where the reserve has to be set in the right right spots to protect us from those scenarios. We're never gonna be able to plan it perfectly. But I think if we get it somewhat pinned down, then we know, we have a better idea of.
Keep a little bit of that to the side as emergency fund.
Yeah,
We're talking about 50%.
Yeah.
Some section of it.
50 or 100% of our
Okay,
budget
for
set
that,
aside.
Not just the yearly budget, the reserve.
Yeah, then we pull those reserves for those incidents. And at that point in time, you'd be strategizing about, well, we know we need a truck in 4 years, so we are going to.
And we've got that.
We are gonna have that in the capital plan, so we're thinking about that ahead of time or figuring out where the funds are gonna come from. If that gets accelerated 2 years, you may already have built up some of what that capital is needed, so now you're just expediting a percentage of it versus 100% of it.
Yeah, each department's not gonna have a reserve, just
No.
the city's gonna have a reserve.
The city's gonna have the reserve.
But like, okay, yeah, you got $1 million, you wanna go to this, with whatever's left over. Is, as long as there's always that
Reserve
reserve
Right.
on the backside.
Right, but then whatever you use out of
Cover
that
you.
reserve, you gotta backfill out of.
in the next year,
Yeah.
then you know that your capital budget is less.
Yeah.
Because you've backfilled 200 grand or 100 grand, or you just know that that comes at a cost at the next year. To the future capital projects.
So Jerry, Lindsay, I think we've gone through. I know it's a little too vague for Jerry yet, then you said, no, that's all right.
Yeah, let us go through our meetings next week, and I don't think it's gonna be any different than what they're used to
Right.
currently.
Yep.
You just need to let us
Yep,
get there.
that's what I was gonna suggest is
Yes.
maybe you guys propose a policy to us in 2 months after you've gone through the process and clarifying things.
Yes.
Is that enough? No resolution enough, and that's just you guys' action?
That's all this was a discussion.
Yep.
Just making sure.
I think they're set. I mean, I think they
We're
feel like
set.
I think we discussed
they
enough.
know where they're going.
And the big bucket.
You know, there's a lot of work to do.
The big bucket of capital versus a bunch of little buckets we're gonna take over now.
Yes,
Yeah,
Yeah.
been here too long.
we're,
Okay.
Let's go home.
Also kind of related to this,
Yeah, back there, I'm having trouble hearing. Thank you.
Also related to this, a little bit of capital, a little bit of expense budget. When do we need to implement the loss? Is that something we do mid-year or once we turn it in for the year?
What do you mean?
Goes into the budget, just goes into the budget.
Nothing changes.
Okay,
from what we've been doing.
nothing changes, so, well, but for 27, we need to subtract that from our total income.
No,
Why not? We were
because we'll
told
do
by
it
our
this,
voters.
we'll do it the same way we've always done it. It was already providing 100% tax relief.
What the voters did was, what the
Yes.
voters,
Absolutely not,
Yes, by definition, it was providing property tax relief.
not by practice.
Yes, by the law, it was applicable. We were using it in property tax relief. The only thing
Just
the
because you
voters,
say
go
the
ahead.
Conviction doesn't make it true.
No, that's what our attorney said, Craig. This is our attorney saying that.
Well, the draft from the attorney.
The attorney, Jerry looked this up because I knew in your email you were gonna go scorched earth on this deal since it didn't
Really,
pass.
you're gonna accuse me of scorched earth?
You are,
I
you're,
can do
you're
scorched
just saying,
earth.
you're just saying, Craig,
Long enough.
you're just saying, Craig, we gotta get, no, not, well, now since the voter said 100%, which it already was, now we lose all this money. No, it's no different than what we were doing. We were in compliance with the law the way we always have been. So
all the voters said is we can't
bond against it.
future income stream.
I think we need a lot more clarity about that.
Jerry has the email from the attorney. He can share it with you.
Jerry, if you forward it to me,
All of our income is tax income. So anything that we get from sales tax and use anywhere in the city is essentially relief from property taxes because if we didn't get it from sales tax, then we have to go back and get it from property tax. So you only have two options. Anything you get in sales tax is money you didn't have to.
but we're charging the max levy rate
Not totally. That's not true entirely.
with 1 year exception this year.
And,
One more year.
and a lot of that is because
So in fact,
they
it's not true.
allow the levy rate to go any higher.
You're
Correct.
talking, you're
That's
talking
all.
about just the general fund. There's
What's
other, you're talking about just the general fund, which is.
He's talking about the general fund
And
levy.
then the two other.
But we have two other levies that are below the maximum. But regardless, the dollars that come into us, we utilize those dollars in operations and towards projects that prevents us from the need to increase or adjust property taxes. Whether that's prevents us from issuing revenue bonds or other general obligation bonds for property tax. What we're doing and what we have been doing based on the attorney's representation is in compliance with property tax relief.
I would appreciate it if you forward that to me, Jerry.
Yeah, I thought that I did.
Nothing changed on
Yeah,
the,
I interpret.
nothing changed on the vote, so.
Right.
It just made it so we cannot bond into the future against it, which is a tool that we've just talked about tonight. We're gonna probably run into needing.
Right.
Then I will
Which
table
is-
that one until I get a chance to read what Jerry's gonna forward.
Well, which is like I said all along, I don't think, no disrespect to anybody here, but I don't think the voters understood what that voting measure was, what they were actually voting on.
I
So,
agree.
but it also, we were hamstrung from being able to present what we felt that provided.
Mhm.
On an opinion basis, we could only do it on a fact basis.
And last, again, related to this, CCL, I think we owe the library community center committee a direction as to what we're doing. Are they supposed to table it? What? I don't think we keep just telling them to go forth.
Keep beating
Yep.
it against the wall.
I talked with Jen about that today. I think
That I would like to sit down and talk with stakeholders, couple council people. You know, people from community club, library board, that kind of thing, and get an idea of direction that we can then talk to the council about, so.
Thank you.
so. I
You know,
think
as long as you're comfortable, I feel bad after the last 2 years of work I've been exposed to in the last 7 that you guys have been doing. I don't wanna string you along. If you're willing to do that work, that's great. I just don't wanna.
I think that's the next step that we have to do, I think it
Okay.
needs to happen and.
All right, good. I didn't wanna string you along any further. Okay,
We're kind of at the end of the agenda. I have a couple quick questions. So logistically on our agenda, we used to have, in addition to city administrator, mayor and council, we had department chair comments. Are we not doing that anymore?
Those come every week in the report
So,
from
okay,
Jerry.
so they're just.
If you wanna request those if you have a specific, like, hey, I wanna request those people or do that, you can,
we've
you
had
can
them,
certainly bring them.
we've
Part
had
of,
them here and stuff, so we're just gonna get those in the written report.
part of the structure, I think, in this change was that they don't have to be here. I know Jen and
Unless they got an
Mark,
item on the agenda.
they haven't had to be here, and I
Okay.
think that's been appreciated. So unless there's an item that we feel like they need to be here for, and
We're giving you weekly updates instead of monthly. And then again, if there's an item on the agenda,
Fine, I
there's an
just never heard
expectation that they be here.
Discussed that that we were quitting doing those, so that was.
got it.
question.
I
And then
I thought we did.
in our additional paperclip portion at the back of ours was a report on some of the
Additional
insurance
stuff.
findings and that kind of stuff. So where are we at with that, or what's our direction based on what they've said about that?
Well,
Wastewater treatment you're talking about?
And the insurance claims and the findings and then, and the inspection that was done. Looks like we're gonna have to do some major changes to the greenhouse on there, so.
well, we're still trying to meet with the actual contractor that built the building.
Okay.
And so we wanna see what their response is to the forensic report.
Okay.
But verbally, the insurance agent, provider said that the claim amount is actually more than what our deductible is, but we haven't received the actual document yet from the adjuster.
Right, but it looked to me like they didn't plan to cover that.
The objection, the pathway forward is this: we were being pushed by FEMA to determine what the insurance company was gonna do. We finally got back what the insurance company is gonna do. We don't have the final, what's the insurance company gonna do? FEMA will, in cases, backfill the difference of what is covered and what is not covered. The problem is this EDT forensic report you're reading, it opened up something that I don't think we were anticipating, which is by chance, there's a structural thing. If that's the case, then there may be a different pathway that we have to pursue
Yeah.
to figure it out. But the
There's a lot-
goal is still that the cost is not, the cost to fix the greenhouse from that tornado or wind damage will be a combination of insurance, FEMA, or another legal avenue. Is where we're gonna get forced to.
Yeah.
But we will see what the insurance says, then we'll ask FEMA what they say, see where we're at, and then they'll have to determine what, or if we have to
Okay,
do
I
something.
just got all this paperwork, read through it, but I wasn't sure where.
It's just a
There
giant,
wasn't anything on the. on
it's
the
just been a
agenda.
giant waiting game, honestly,
informational.
because
Yep, okay. Good enough.
EDT sent that back, and then it's just been a giant waiting game. But we do still have FEMA engaged, they've seen the report, insurance has seen the report. We don't know what they're gonna cover.
I really applaud what's gonna be the new city council members that are here and candidates that came and are participating and following along, so. That's really appreciated.
For sure.
One question,
Oop.
I have on my calendar a possible meeting on December 2nd. Are we having that? Not having that?
That was for the CIP. I think we decided not to have it.
Okay. I'll clear my
No, that's a budget.
Okay, that's the first budget meeting, December 2.
So yes, we are.
November 5 was, I think, the second CIP meeting.
Yeah. So December second.
Yeah, plan on it, be here. It's
And then we'll do our rate, just so to clarify that.
Okay.
The swearing in for the new candidates will be then on the regular meeting, which is the December
8th.
Eighth. December 8th.
So this December 2nd on a Tuesday is gonna be at 6 o'clock. I don't know.
5:30,
5:30 on which one?
December 2.
Number two.
Is that the right date, Lindsay?
I thought it was December 2nd.
I didn't have it on my calendar.
I have it on there.
I don't think anybody was on that.
5:30.
Yeah, it's on the.
Yeah, it was on the laid out schedule, Excel schedule.
It's by department, so we'll start with, I think it's the fire department, then go to EMS. On down the line, every 30 minutes.
And then that's a budget meeting.
On December 2nd will be a first budget meeting for us.
The other one.
The other one is December 9th or December
Eighth.
8th.
Regular.
And that'll be regular. That's the wrong one.
That's your orientation meeting.
That's your orientation.
Just look
Second,
here.
fourth, eighth.
Yeah, but you get $30 for each one of those.
Yeah, you did
Really
get paid.
Not till January.
Ah, can we have a motion to adjourn?
Each of those 4-hour meetings.
Second from Sean. All those in favor? All those in favor of adjourning signify with aye. 9:28. All those opposed? Perfect. Thank you. Good work. Good packet.